Hey, this is Travis Gafford, the double lift expert, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Okay, this is going to be episode 50 of Narrative Wake. That's right. When we started this show, people told me, I don't want to watch this show. Why have you picked her as your co-host? Some people, I will say, actually naively, Kelsey, didn't know that you were the co-host. They just thought I was having a random panel on. They were like, for the next episode, could we have NateDOhDoubleG? And I was like, I don't want to break it to you guys, but this is the show. Like, it's just going to be like this with a couple of different people. And they all said, we'd never make it. No one would ever keep watching. Now, I can't say that we're entirely wrong. We almost didn't make it. Sometimes people weren't watching. But in the end, we did make it. Some people are watching. I feel like gradually, we're going forward. It's getting better. We're improving. I mean, I'd hope we improve after 50 episodes. It'd be pretty dire state of affairs if we didn't whatsoever. And it was the same as in the past. And also, I've also striven on this show to try and never get too lax with how we do the show. Because one thing that actually did get depressing on Summoning Insight is that last year of Summoning Insight where we used to do one episode every 2.5 months, like, there was some phoning in going there. Like, I'd be asking Monty, like, what does he think of EU LCS or something? He was it's like, you said that same opinion like 2 months ago. You didn't watch any, did you? You didn't watch it. Why are you giving me opinions about shit you didn't watch? That's my job. You don't even know the division of labour here. Why are you encroaching on my shit, motherfucker? You stay in your corner. You're supposed to know stuff. Right, so, as usual, Thorin's here, Kelsey Moser's here. I'm just waiting until she starts. Like, I can't tell if we're really such assholes that we encroach on her personal space on a web show that she can't let loose this, like, cheeky, sort of banterish personality that she does at the beginning of all those shows. She always, on those solo shows, she always puts a little joke in. It's like, she has like a weird rapport with the viewers even where she's sort of like, hey guys, okay, back again. She's a fucking YouTuber. I'm surprised at the end she didn't like and subscribe, guys, in the talent box below. Tell me what you want to do. I'll be coming out with ASMR videos next week. Like, she's doing a really good job actually. But I'm trying to like gradually like bring that into this show, because obviously I've taken up too much space in that respect. I'm like one of those people in the band, I'm like the guitarist getting all the riffs off and she's just stuck behind playing the bass. Like, can I ever go? Like, no, that's my job. I'm do all the fucking solos. Do the bass and stop doing as many notes. So I'm trying to just gradually bring Kelsey in this equation. And the thing is, it's episode 50. So obviously 50 in America is the code for police. And obviously, due to Cloud9 being, as far as I can tell, the best team of all time and making the semi-finals, they basically called the internet police on us, and we're no longer allowed to analyse, predict, getting predictions wrong. We're in some sort of mad Handmaiden's Tales, like dystopian sci-fi. When you get predictions wrong, you basically will be killed in the future. That's like the only logical scenario. It'd be some sort of scapegoating ritual where it'll be like the French Revolution, even women and children will gather around, watch you be beheaded as a heretic in front of all the crowd. Everyone will cheer as your head rolls down rolls down the fucking pebbled streets or whatever, and then we'll just bring out, LS at that point in time. I don't know, whoever's next on the list of traitors who must be destroyed. Now, do you want to know, by the way, the ultimate irony of that is everyone for the last 50 episodes, Kelsey, who was telling me, just get a new co-host. Who do you think they were suggesting? NateDOhDoubleG, LS, all the people they are so mad at right now whenever I do any content. It's like, you motherfuckers don't know, as I've always told people with content, it's like, you don't know what you want the people watching. That's why you have to take what we give you and hope there's an overlap. And anytime you're trying to tell people who are like half lying because they're just really nice people like Kelsey who are like, tell me your feedback and I'll try and put it in the next episode. Like one by one out of all the viewers. Like, I know she's doing a really good job of tricking you and thinking like she's actually going to do it. But like, no one could do that, you idiot. Like, you can't deliver the whole fucking show like a la carte to order, can you? You have to just make a good show. So anyway, to make a good show, what I thought we'd do is, generally, there's this sentiment on Reddit, right, that European people are being really obnoxious this world, right? They're like sort of bragging a lot. They're just really rubbing it in everyone's face that Europe wins. So I thought, I don't want that because I believe in a fair and balanced show with very objective opinions and a lot of tempered, nuanced analysis. And I thought to myself, that doesn't sell. Actually, fuck it. Let's get a veteran, who obviously everyone already hates for good reason. We'll get Peter Dunn, who they should hate, but they don't know why yet. Like, they don't, Peter. If you do better, you're going to get more hated. I promise you. Just stick with it. Like, you're doing great analysis. That's your problem. You actually do too much analysis. You've got to be... Try and take some of the analysis, and instead of saying like, well, EDG didn't do a good job with the priority through bot lane, maybe just say something like, EDG is fucking smashing them when they do that. Like, put some hyperbole in there. Stop being so nuanced. Because the thing is, when you do your Twitter reviews of the games, they're actually fucking sick, mate. You only do like 4 sentences, but you do summarise the whole game. It's pretty good. It's not bad.
Thank you.
Compliment? Yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, you have to understand, you're the coach of Splyce, mate. I have to get the compliments in now. All the rest's going to be the abuse. That part comes later in the show. So,
yeah.
I mean, to be fair, on this show, I can't lie.
That was a record for Thorin going on solo, and an intro for NateDOhDoubleG is pretty good, I think.
Wasn't bad.
For the 50th, he brought out all the good guys.
Also, let's just put this on the table. Like, let's be serious for 1 minute, okay? I will put this on the table at the beginning. Obviously, we're all going to be fairly obnoxious if you're only a fan of NA or you're only a fan of Korea or whatever, and you think that everyone has to praise your region. But I'll just say it myself before we start the episode, so no one else. I'll be like Eminem at the end of fucking 8 Mile. Like, what are you going to say about me now? Like, everyone in this whole chat is on like a fucking team that's had their own failures in European LCS. Like, they're not actually all like unilaterally fans of everything from Europe and hate everything of every other region. That doesn't even apply to Kelsey anyway. She doesn't even fucking come from Europe, and she originally covered the LPL. Like, I don't know what you want. Like, you can't put people in neat little boxes. That doesn't, well, until you get to that dystopian future when I'll be killed. But aside from that, until your fucking utopia comes, because for me it's a dystopia, for them it's a utopia, obviously. The Reddit decided society. Until we get to that world, when I am hunted like a fucking renegade outlaw, like Morpheus or something, trying to red pill motherfuckers out of this world. Until that day, we're just going to have to live in this one. So let's start here. Veteran, coach of H2K. That's the only time I'm going to say it on this show. That's not even a diss or a compliment. It's just a fact. We're going to have to live with that. So, veteran, coach of H2K. Did you come on this show in good faith to discuss the results and to predict the semi-finals? Or did you come on this show to do some of that and to talk a lot of shit? Come on, let's just get cards on the table at the beginning of the episode.
Is it possible for it to be shit if it's true, though?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? One man's shit is another man's shinola. You might have struck something there, veteran, but the problem is that concept I've just said there. They'll go, that's how you downplay and backtrack on your shit being written. Yeah, okay, imaginary guy that I'm talking about now who maybe relates to someone who once said something on Reddit. Just get out of my head. Anyway, yes, veteran, it can also be shit and true. Like, I think if you notice, people like LS, Monty, made a whole career out of that. Like, they say some stuff that is true, but the way they say it makes people decide it's shit anyway. But let's be real, you are going to go wild on this one.
I'm responsible for parts where shit and truth overlap. If the truth happens to be shit, I'm just going for the truth. If it happens to be shit, that's not my fault. So.
Okay. Like, Peter, I'll be honest, I tried to pretend like I was bringing in you as well to be like another veteran. So, to be true, right, what I've done is, veterans like the spicy jalapeno I've thrown in there, and you are like the soothing coriander that I've added to balance out the flavour and give it a little bit of
spices.
Exactly, I do. I've just tried to like balance it out to be really nice. Obviously, I don't even know what spice I would give Kelsey. Maybe she's just a lovely, adorning vanilla. Okay. You know, I didn't actually know this. This is something weird. When I was a kid, I don't know about you in the rest of the UK, but we always called vanilla ice cream plain ice cream, right? As in, no flavour. I didn't realise, because vanilla is its own flavour, there's actually people out there who their favourite flavour is vanilla. That's not even a joke, you know. That's actually their favourite flavour, like plain ice cream.
And that makes up my 4,500 YouTube subscribers. There you go.
Yes, exactly. The sort of people who just watch your soul of you, they are the people who love vanilla. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. They probably can taste extra, like, layers to the vanilla that I can't. Like, their expectation for what ice cream would be is totally different to me. In fact, you know what, Kelsey? Chocolate's too overpowering for them. That's too much. It's too intense. They don't want that. They want vanilla. And you are killing that fucking niche. So, let's start here. Let's just get it out of the way at the beginning of the episode, right? Let's talk about Cloud9 versus the Freak of Freaks, because that has nothing to do with Europe, but they're already going to assume the whole episode's about Cloud9 anyway, and they're already going to go fucking mental. So let's just get this Cloud9 sweep for Freak of Freaks at the beginning, okay? So Peter, start me off on a reasonable track here. How did Cloud9 sweep the Freak of Freaks?
I don't know how good Cloud9 are, but I know that the Freak of Freaks were awful in that series. Like, absolutely, completely terrible. What it looked like is it looked like Keen was trying to get top priority and salvage the rest of his team, and then he would be walking towards his team and they would die for no reason, just in the middle of nowhere. So I felt really, really bad for Keen in that series, but a lot of the games hinged on one or two moments that could have gone either way. So, in answer to your question, I have no idea how good Cloud9 are. I predicted Cloud9 to come in my pick'ems to come bottom of their group. I thought that they would struggle a little bit in play-ins, although still get through. And yet here they are in the World semi-final. So, just goes to show how much I know.
He's just too nice, isn't it? It's the way he backtracked it all there. Doesn't go to show how much you know. You know stuff, Peter. You just got the prediction wrong there. You know other stuff. Come on.
But in all honesty, that series was... Cloud9 were good to pick up the opportunities that they were thrown. And Africa threw the many, many, many balls to catch, and they caught more than 50% of them, so they won. The end.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Kelsey, where do you come on this?
It's actually interesting because I looked at the Game 2 draft between C9 and Africa, and I think to myself, okay, so this is not Africa are not giving them a hard enough game. We have to just go hard mode. Have a draft with the narrowest win condition possible. So just pulling off that composition and that play in isolation is actually commendable, right? I actually think that that's something that you can recommend regardless of the quality of the opponent. I think that Snazore was rotating to the right place at the right time. You could say that a lot of his movements were very opportune, but he was there to pick up those opportunities. Yeah. I think that was actually very good. And I know a lot of junglers in the tournament who wouldn't do that.
Yes.
But yeah, I do think that eventually, no matter how much you want to praise Cloud9, you do have to get to the point where Africa looked like the worst team in the quarterfinal.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. And to go with that the ball was constantly being thrown towards them, analogy from Peter, the ball was mostly being thrown from the bottom lane, I do have to say. If I have to look at anyone who individually underperformed, it would definitely be the bottom lane. Also, Kuro, especially in the first game, with his decision-making around the wave was very questionable. I found it quite strange that they wanted to trade out Spirit for Mowgli, and I actually remember tweeting the Viger V2 video about jungle pathing and stuff, because honestly, a lot of the issue to that series and why Svenskeren was able to get so big in certain games was because the laners didn't seem to understand how to play this specific jungle matchup out, and it really does come down to them when it's something as aggressive as a Xin Zhao particularly. And then later on when it was the Nocturne, I just think that was generally a really good composition to go for. Basically everything spiked at 2 items there. I thought it was a really good decision from Cloud9. And then obviously Game 2 is the game that most people will think about when they really want to praise Svenskeren. I do think we need to consider that Svenskeren was really impactful for them mid to late game for that game for sure, but it wasn't exactly like he was hard carrying losing lanes early on or anything like that. So a bit tempered there with Sven, but I think if I have to point to anywhere where there was significant performance discrepancies, it would probably be in the bot lane.
Right, this is one thing I thought, because I thought this exact topic would come up when we discussed the Africa side of the equation. And it's going to tie into what has been on every show that I've done about this since the quarterfinals, to the extent that I almost feel like it's too easy a narrative, which is if you look at the teams that made the semi-finals, 2 of them just are solo lane teams. That's where the best players are. And the other 2, to some degree, can play around the solo lanes if they want to. They have the option to. Now, that means it's very easy to say, see, all along it was about having really great solo. And now the reason why that feels too easy a narrative is first of all, 2 of those series, RNG and the KT ones, could have been the other team winning, in which case that narrative immediately dies because those are the 2 main teams that played around the solo laners. And then secondly, the reason why that narrative now seems revolutionary and so pleasing as a new thought in your brain is because everyone spent the rest of the tournament thinking RNG was going to be the best team who weren't playing that way. And so everyone was thinking, again, it's a bot lane game and it's going to be played the way Uzi and RNG plays. So if you notice, the narrative, it gets too simple because you have to remove all the other context to put it in there. So in the context of this series, Veteran, if you've ever seen the Afrika Freaks play in the LCK, one of the reasons why they had that sub aiming who they used to bring in is because Kramer seems to only want to play League of Legends one way, which is exactly you'd think of an ego AD carry. It's give me hyper carries, give me all the gold, let me get big and I will win in the mid to late game. Right? Was that actually something that was forced in this game? Do you think Afrika had a sense, if indeed it is a real thing, that you have to play through the solo laners or maybe playing through bot lane and playing mid to late doesn't work. What would you say to that?
We discussed this in the previous narrative wake that I was on, where Afrika's ideal scenario is a 4-1 scenario, and I thought that potentially G2 can actually match that, but they only have 2 champions of which they can do it on, and they got those 2 champions in every single game bar 1 that they've won, so there you go. But I actually, I will answer, but I do want to say that on your initial point, I do fundamentally disagree that everybody was calling that it was a bot lane centric meta pre-Worlds.
I just mean the general community consensus on that, not like everyone had on my show.
Last time I was on Narrative Break, I was definitely talking about this being a 4-1 solo centric meta anyway, and I'm pretty sure most people here would agree with me that was the case. Even in playoffs in Europe especially, you were finding that top lane carries were dominating, for sure. And bot lane was basically your Ezreal Broms, your Kaisers, all of this type of stuff that is not going to get priority because they're not looking to play around that side. And so to go into what you're asking, which is basically, are they being forced to play around the late game carry? I think that the decision to pick Kai'Sa is a good one. I think Kai'Sa has her place in a 4-1-1-3-1 scenario. I don't think it's necessarily a complete FF or anything like that, but I do think that every time I have seen it being picked by Eastern teams and seen it losing, it's because you see so many early skirmishes around bot at the same time, and I disagree with that aspect of how the pick is being played. So I think Afrika, if Afrika is going for these kind of like late game carries, I don't necessarily think that they should be looking to skirmish bot when Sneaky is picking Lucian and shit like this. I think that if you do that, and Cloud9 have managed to game themselves a superior top lane matchup, Cloud9 are going to win, because they're going to win the 4-1 later on. And I think Kai'Sa's really good in that kind of scenario because Kai'Sa's one of the few champions that can collapse really well. I think Tom's one of the few champions that will threaten really well in that. And I think Cloud9's final draft where they had Nocturne is incredibly good in that kind of scenario as well. But I think that if you're playing towards bot, and you have a worse skirmishing bot lane, and you have a losing top lane, you are now setting yourself up to fail anyway. And I think this is just something that is uncharacteristic of top teams, basically any other year, where you'd be able to identify that teams are playing like this. But I've now seen multiple teams do this in the quarterfinals, and I don't quite understand why they're doing it. And then Wonder pops off on 1v9s on Camille, or pops off on Aatrox or on Akali, or the top laner is popping off eventually, and then they have no response to this. They can't have any response to this, and then they get flanked in a team fight. The AD carry gets one shot because it's a carry top meta now, and the carry top is just one shotting your AD carry you've pulled all these resources into inefficiently, and you lose the game. And I think that this is why the teams that have lost, and the teams that have won. It's because legitimately solo lane is like incredibly powerful right now. There are so many strong top lane picks that you can pull this off with, and the picks that people are playing around in the bot lane aren't necessarily the best skirmish ones. Ironically, except for like, for example, Uzio's Lucian, which I know people are going to complain that he was picking about, but I don't necessarily think that was like the worst part of the composition or anything like that.
But I think one of the big problems though with Afrika compared to some of the other teams is how disconnected their top and their bot lane play together. I mean, if we look at how G2 play, we focus on Wonder playing really well, solo carrying all of these games, but his bot lane are always in position to control the wave so that they can't be dove, so that they can't be cross map. And sort of my abiding memory of Afrika at this World Championships will be during the Baron steal in Game 3, which decided Game 3 for Cloud9, where you have Tusin and Kramer auto-attacking the Ornn, who they're never going to kill, whilst the other 3 members of the team are killing Baron, resulting in Baron getting to 16 health, the Ornn still being on almost full health, and killing the Baron with an auto-attack. And I think that was the disconnect you had at this tournament. I think the Afrika bot lane, especially Tusin, were not able to coordinate with the rest of the map. And I think that was their downfall and why Cloud9 were able to punish him with.
I do still think that the game plan that these teams are coming in with is suboptimal for this meta, and I do think Cloud9's plan coming in was better though. But I do definitely agree with your point around how they were playing around Baron.
I think for me the big issue with Kai'Sa that you brought up is that you kind of actually do have to skirmish with Kai'Sa to make it work, and part of that is just her lack of mobility prior to securing her ultimate, and also the fact that she combos a certain way with engage champions. There are so many other champions that if you just sort of want a good wave clear scaling AD carry that you can pick, like Sivir, like Tristana that are going to do a lot more for you, whereas I feel like with Kai'Sa, you need to kind of be skirmishing for her to be relevant. Otherwise, she loses a lot of her windows for effectiveness, and you are left with someone who can get forced on, who can get doved, who isn't going to do a whole lot, who isn't going to clear, as well as some of these other ADCs, into like 3 items and hope that she just works. So I think for me that's why Kai'Sa has been a bit of a problem more often, is that it's not going to get priority for you, but it also forces you to play around that lane.
I think Kai'Sa has some fine early spikes anyway, but if you're obviously talking like pre-item spikes in this context, and then I think it's going to come down to support pick more. Like, I don't think they're going to be diving Kai'Sa if she has an Alistar, if she has a Tarn, if she has a Braum, but I quite often see a paired of the Rakan to do the Xayah Rakan denial, and that's when it gets really bad in the bot lane.
I mean,
when that scenario isn't there, it seems a little bit safer. Like, we have seen Tom Kaiser's, for example, being threatened by a 4-man, and it hasn't transpired. And if she gets her first item in that kind of setup, then I still think it's fine. And I think either way, you should be looking to trade favorably towards top, regardless. And I think you will win based off of that, and the Kai'Sa will be strong eventually regardless.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think that the way you're playing is you want to play around bot kind of in the early to mid game, and then you want to have top picks that scale really well and become insane threats kind of on their own and are self-sufficient in a sense. And that's why we're seeing like Klepto from Bwipo and all of this come into play. And I think that that's been kind of a bit more relevant, and that's why Kai'Sa has been also, again, part of why Kai'Sa has been super awkward. And I think you can still dive Kai'Sa more easily if she has an Alistar than you can some other AD carry pick, like even a Tristana or anything like that. So
I actually think the way that Fnatic played with Bwipo, though, because you singled out Bwipo here, and that he would be scaling top on the Victor, but in that particular game, regardless, what really swung the game in their favor was being able to unlock the Victor early on to do his roam to bot lane with TP. Like, he didn't even have to teleport bot. They take out tower, they go bot, they start a skirmish around Drake, and they have an insane damage advantage because enemy is Shen, and enemy Shen's wave is bad anyway. And they are able to output way too much damage before Shen can join the fight, and then Shen is useless. And the top lane still makes that, regardless of what the bot lane situation was. And the situation was dismal, by the way. It was insanely dismal.
Victor is going to be effective against the Shen regardless, and actually EDG tried to influence that lane more anyway. So I think on that, like, Victor was a perfect pick because it is self-sufficient. You also have them playing things like the Swain. I wasn't just talking about the Victor. You have a lot of things that Fnatic are doing so that their top laner can be self-sufficient and can scale and have a lot more pressure than some of these other champions that you would think would be really good when you think carry top.
Yeah, but my point is that in that game, it wasn't necessarily that the Victor was self-sufficient or anything into this regard. What really swung the game in their favor, despite it being so far in EDG's favor, was that he was able to get the first roam off to bot, which only happened because they opted to do the straight-up trade. They traded for top. They traded for top giga hard. Take tower, go bot, start a fight with an advantage finally, and the bot lane situation did not matter. And I think that's how the rest of the tournament is going to go as well. I don't think the bot lane situation will matter.
I mean, EDG started the focus on bot with Ray TPing like he was winning the lane. Like, I think that it wasn't necessarily them intentionally putting a lot of resources and trading really hard, so much as them getting advantages in solo lanes off of EDG focusing too much on bot side.
Right, be that as it may, that is called a digression. That is the EDG Fnatic series. We're still talking about C9 and Freakers. So to wind it all back like a fucking host zillion now, I want to ask this question, which is, with the Cloud9 team, I actually made a point on, I don't know if this episode's out, I can't keep track of all the shit that's been recorded and has been released, but I made a point that I actually think in a weird, bizarre way, one of the only teams that benefited from the sub rules at Worlds actually is Cloud9, because otherwise, seemingly they would have been tempted to put Golden Glue in for 1 or 2 games, and having seen the way Worlds has played, I don't really think that would have been great actually. Like, I think the way they used him wasn't around this way that people are talking about the solo leaders. He was clearly like more of like a hold mid type character. And instead, they had to play Jensen now because they had no choice. He's the only one that they had in this equation. Yeah. So on the Cloud9 side of the equation, when I was like characterizing it before, like they're not really a team that was always playing solo laners anyway and has to do that anyway. Like they're a team where it seems as though, for whatever reason, they've come about this style. right? Do you think that they actually have consciously figured out a read on the meta and that's how they were able to get this far, everyone? Peter, you look like you have something going on in your brain here, mate. You've muted yourself.
He's muted.
He's so polite, he even mutes himself so he doesn't breathe. What a fucking legend. Right, go on.
No, I just I was just thinking about it, and because I think it was interesting because I don't think Jensen would have played Game 4 or Game 5 of their series against Gambit if they'd had the sub rule, because he was playing extremely poor in that series. Yeah. So in a different timeline, maybe Golden Blue is the one who's carrying Cloud9 past Afrika.
Okay.
Maybe
Whoa. The assumption there is that they won with Golden Glue in the last 2 games, by the way.
I don't know. It's interesting. I just hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, you're right. It did force them to play. But I think one of the reasons why they managed to step up so much is that Licorice has really performed exceptionally well at this tournament. I mean, I think in terms of top lane value to his team, he is by far the most valuable top laner at this tournament to his team.
You two can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I am assuming that the personalities on the Chinese side of things, particularly with relation to RNG, if we're going to directly compare Cloud9 to a team they've actually played, personality-wise, it is far less likely for Sneaky to demand that we're still playing towards bot than it is for UZI to demand that we're still playing towards bot. And you are a Maokai player now. Licorice is probably not something that has ever occurred in the Cloud9 camp. Maybe something similar has occurred in the RNG camp. I do think something that is really good about Licorice that I've observed, at least outside of his gameplay, because we're all just going to say that he has performed like exceptionally well at this tournament anyway. I do think his confidence in his role and his picks particularly is something that I don't often see from a lot of top laners who think I'm just going to fulfill my role. So I think he is definitely, if it was going to be a carry top meta, he would definitely identify that and he would have the team tending towards it. And I don't necessarily like Sneaky has been able to play and carry bot metas. Like his Twitch was exceptional way back in the day. I remember that was destroying OMG actually at the first the unofficial first MSI
All-Stars,
that was still an all-star.
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't think Sneaky would have complained about that. I think I can see how the conversation would have evolved in the Cloud9 camp where they would have arrived at this conclusion.
I think if you look at Cloud9's games this year, early on, the way that Licorice kind of stand out, so everyone obviously was talking about Echo Fox and Huni being a carry top laner, but is that I actually was so impressed with a lot of Cloud9's macro early on, and I even wrote articles about it because they were using, like, I thought what made Jensen so good is he really understood like the kinds of control he can get off of resetting first as a mid laner, and I feel like a lot of mid laners in an NA context at that time didn't really get that, and he was using it to go top, and they were using pressure from, at that time, Smoothie to go top as well. Like if they got a lead in the bot lane, they would use Smoothie to go top as well. And so this to me is just kind of a natural evolution of Cloud9 and a lot of what Cloud9 want to do. And then you saw even in the NALCS playoffs, they were the ones playing with Aatrox Nocturne, or they were playing Hecarim Nocturne into Aatrox more specifically, which I still think is more about the Nocturne than it is about the Hecarim, but whatever. It just was, they were already kind of in a good position to do pretty well at this tournament if you are only considering how the meta is developing.
Okay. Is it the case, ignoring team placing at Worlds, that Jensen is a better player at Worlds than Bjergsen is at the years that he goes? What would you say?
Yeah.
And if so, does it even relate to this year? Is it even a continuing trend? Aside from the fact Bjergsen wasn't here, obviously.
Do you mean continuing trend in terms of was Jensen always better than Bjergsen every year at Worlds?
No, I mean as in like, okay, domestically, you're going to find very few people who will say that Jensen is better domestically than Bjergsen. That's just the consensus.
Well, one is on TSM and one is on Cloud9.
Sure. But at Worlds, obviously, team-wise, Jensen's had much better performances in terms of the team placing. I wanted to know, does it mean that you actually think when they've gone to Worlds, Jensen's been a better mid laner? And if so, the continuing trend is, has that continued at this Worlds? Or has it been different in some way, his role and how he's played in this particular one, which is his best ever placing as a team?
I think, and I know Kelsey is going to have like 50 quadrillion things to say about this because she's written so many articles about this particular problem. I think the way Cloud9 use mid and jungle is just better in general than the way TSM use mid and jungle. And I think it's
You mean
more
they
to do with
don't
that.
have the jungler die near I think it's the wolves on the blue side near the bottom. I forgot that one.
so
Did I get that
glad.
correct? Yes. Okay,
Even
thank
if
you.
it's the
It's
same
the Raptors.
jungler.
Yes,
Even if
exactly.
it's the same jungler. Now
I'm so
Svenskeren
glad
has
that this is a
moved.
memorable line.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty good. Yeah, okay.
Now Svenskeren has moved, we know for a fact that this is a TSM thing.
Yes, that's a good
That's
one,
true, that's
veteran.
true, actually.
That's a good angle,
We
yes.
know for a fact now.
Take
this
that,
is-
Bjergsen. Because you know what they do in the TSM camp, by the way. This is one thing that I've identified that no one else has. They rely, by the way, it's the exact same Mark Z does in every single Blame game. They rely on the fact that obviously single factor analysis of a 10-player game with loads of objectives and moment to moment decisions will never work for single factor analysis. Like, did this one player cost you the entire game off this one player? That will never be the answer, yes, almost. So both these people, Mark Z and TSM, use that logic and repeatedly trick fans into going, well, it wasn't me, Bjergsen, who lost all the games. I did all right in some of them. Well, it can't have just been Sven. He was in a hard situation. Well, Hortzer didn't always have the right picks and they didn't play through him. Well, you can't blame the coach. He just does the pick ban in the draft. Well, you can't blame Reginald. He tried to get right places. It's like, no, you're right. I blame all of you, you stupid fucks. The question is, who gets blamed where and slightly more. So the question on that one is like, yeah, whenever they say it, we don't turn the junglers into that. It's like, who the fuck does then? The jungle fairies when you're asleep. Like, is this real life? They all do it. They all do the same thing,
Is
don't
this
they?
like the skill vampire?
Exactly, that's the alternative. The jungle
fairies.
fairies, yeah.
It's so true, though. It's so true.
Okay. Anyone else that want to weigh on the Jensen Bjergsen thing then? Because I disrupted you there, veteran. You were saying about how you're going to have a lot to say, or Kelsey would have a lot to say. But
Yeah.
what was your take on it? How they use mid and jungle in Cloud9?
My take or Kelsey's?
Yeah. No, your take. What were you going to say
cut
on
out
that?
very briefly there.
Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
They actually understand. Oh, by the way, this is actually something that I've noticed Chinese teams in particular are doing really well. They actually understand how to translate that pressure into map-wide pressure, as opposed to just use it to commend more resources into mid lane. Which is, by the way, what Fnatic are actually doing more than anything. But with something that I found really surprising in basically every Chinese game is that if the mid laner pops off, he pops off all over the goddamn map, by the way. But Cloud9 are really good at rotating their mid laner out like this, whereas with TSM, all the action kind of, if this is Summoner's Rift, all the action kind of occurs like here, and maybe a little bit here, and that's basically it.
I think for me, all this year, there was actually not really a question that Jensen was better than Bjergsen. This was like the first year where throughout the entire year, absolutely Jensen was better. So, yeah, I guess if you want to look at historical performances only and whether or not Jensen or Bjergsen were better, I think that last year was kind of the first year where C9 had really a good idea of how they want to play with their jungler, because before I think that they had separate problems, right? Where it was like there was a complete and utter lack of communication. The jungle could only play around one lane at once, which is a separate problem from the TSM problem, but we're not going to get into that, even though I'm sure Thorin would love nothing else but to make this another episode that revolves around TSM. So
It's what I do.
it's what he
My fallback. Yes.
It is a very strange comparison to make, because I thought you were going to ask about the difference between Jensen and Caps, and then you asked about Bjergsen, and it's like, okay, we're going
No,
here
but
again.
okay, here's the thing. Maybe we'll wait till the Fnatic one for that one. I feel like what we should do, we will do that, by the way, Veteran. I'll seed that later on, because later on we can obviously have an interesting discussion of the three EU mid laners that are in series. Yeah.
Conversation has been, you know.
Yeah, but we need to get the requisite amount of TSM related discussion in a show. Nothing to do with TSM, right? Come on, Peter.
I'm in there to talk about TSA.
But I mean, just to go back to Jensen, I think that the thing that has really improved Jensen over the past sort of 6 months has been that he almost seems to understand jungle better as a mid laner. Because if you go back and you look at sort of his positioning in lane, sort of last year, especially year before last, there was the famous game where he failed his Echo ult in Game 5 of finals against TSM.
Yes.
But that game, people often forget that he gave up like 2 kills or 1 kill early in the laning phase, where he attacked Bjergsen on the left side of the lane when Raptor Camp had just finished spawning. So therefore the jungler would almost certainly be on the Raptor. So they were blue side. He attacked Bjergsen next to TSM's jungle camp just at the time when it was spawning. And of course the jungler was there and came around and turned the 1-on-1 and killed him. And I think that you see a lot more intelligence with how Jensen is playing in his lane positionings, how he's communicating with his jungler to sort of track enemy jungler, to sort of aggressively go and invade, and how he positions himself in the lane. So I think that this is something which is markedly improved in Jensen's game, and I think it's what has made him, helped to make him a more complete player at this point in time. So I think...
Go on. Sorry, I thought you'd finished your thought.
No, that's it.
Okay, this may be down a bit to Svenskeren, though, because Svenskeren was very good about calling enemy jungle position during his time at SK Gaming, is my understanding.
Yes.
This may well have changed in the last... God, how long has it been? Like
that was the famous thing
years.
that people in the team always
3
said,
years.
is that the reason why he didn't need to ward as much as he just always knew where the other enemy jungler was.
Yep.
Yes. But Jensen definitely does more with that information, because lest we forget, Svenskeren has also been on TSM. So, you know... This is definitely your place of Jensen.
Yeah, and in fairness also, for a while in the summer split, the rotation was kind of Jensen Blabber and Golden Glue Svenskeren, so you could still attribute a lot of Jensen's jungle awareness even when he wasn't with Svenskeren, and it was still evident in a lot of those games. So.
Okay, if you insist on taking away some of the discs that were bouncing off onto TSM there, then I guess you just have to add context. Why do you have to ruin everything, Kelsey? Don't you know narratives can only survive without context? That's the air that they need to breathe to live, you know? Like, they are a fire which goes out without that oxygen. So, what about this then? One of the last topics I thought on the Cloud9 Afrika issue, then we'll move on to the other series, is, right, obviously, it's always going to be pure speculation, unless you have an inside source, as to how a coach does things and what impact he had and what was the player, etc. Right? If a team has had the big transformations that Cloud9 has had throughout the year and even at Worlds itself, does some of that get attributed to Reaped in your mind? Does that make him go up in value in your mind, or he's done a very good job in that sense? Could some of it have just been figured out by players themselves individually and they've backed their way into it? Where would you come down on this? Just your own personal opinion. We're not making some final judgment on Reaped or whatever.
Reaped and the org, by the way. Okay, so a big deal here is that to pull off a move like Reaper did, in the way that he managed the roster, you need your organization to back you all the way. And when they benched Sneaky and Jensen, they didn't just bench Sneaky and Jensen. They made a video benching Sneaky and Jensen. Yeah. They made sure that there was no way that these kids could rationalize in their head that this is a temporary thing.
Well, they didn't do basically veteran what I've heard so many teams do, which is you lie and say that they're ill for a week or something, you know, which is like the easy way to get out of it. Yeah, you're right. They made it public, right?
Yeah, no, the moment you do that, though, there's no way that these kids can rationalize in their head that this is a temporary thing, that this is a they'll crack before I crack kind of deal. No. At this point, there's way more pressure on Cloud9 to follow through with this than there anything you could possibly do to them or you could possibly offer to them. And this is so I really think the decision was really good by Reaped. You need to have already been dedicating resources into finding strong amateur players, and God knows these guys bought like 4 junglers at the NA scouting grounds or whatever, and these guys actually invested in Golden Glue. They've been investing in NA rookie talent for so long. They didn't just buy up every has-been like Team Liquid did. And only with that kind of foundation, which has to all be signed off by the org and agreed upon by the org all the way, could you possibly do this. I fully agree with Reaped's decision for this, but I also feel Cloud9 in general requires praise for this, because not many orgs would agree to this. Not many at all.
And there's no question as well that Jack came out and was very, very keen to share the criticism from the fans that they got when they benched their star players. I mean, he came out on Twitter. Was he in the video? I can't remember if he was in the video.
He did a separate video.
He did an interview with Travis.
Yeah,
specifically talking about this.
Yeah, and he said specifically, this is something that we back Reaped. We back him unanimously. There was never a question that when he said this, that we would follow through. And I think he has to take quite a lot of credit for that as well.
This is the dream, by the way. Like, you think about doing these kind of things so much, but you don't have your org. Your org doesn't necessarily have your back on this. And Jack didn't just have his back; he absorbed as much as he possibly could to make it as easy as possible. Like that's such a it's a risk. Like it is a risk. Like I can totally understand why orgs don't do this. Those weren't just 2 of their star players; they were 2 of their literal most valuable assets.
Yes.
that they were benching there.
And as you say, obviously you had to sort of set it up before you pulled the trigger on it. You couldn't just say, we need to bench these guys and have we got any subs? You had to have sort of like got yourself ready for it first.
Yes,
sure.
All the investments the organization had made into talent all paid off for this move. And the big thing that Cloud9 are going to benefit off of from now on is they are now bigger than these star players, for sure. If Jensen and Sneaky move on to another org, no one is going to think, oh, Sneaky's gone, that's the end of Cloud9, I'm no longer a fan of them. Cloud9 have displayed to everybody in video form, they are bigger than the players and they know what's up. These guys are the kids, we are the adults. And every community member is going to see that now. Every audience member is going to see that. They have really solidified their standing in so many ways.
But it's also interesting comparing what they did compared to almost every single other org in NA when it came to benching.
Yes.
Like you'd hear all of these rumors trickle through, there wouldn't be that sort of immediate backing. There wouldn't be that sort of an explanation.
Yes.
And I think it shows in the difference between Cloud9 and other orgs, and it's maybe one of the reasons why we're talking about Cloud9 being in the semifinals to Worlds right now.
Yeah, a lot of so you had other orgs come in and play rookie talents, but you didn't have it feeling deliberate. It felt like an emergency gut reaction to, there's suddenly a problem where we have to move Medios, and we're not going to say what the problem is. There was some kind of synergy issue with the coach, whatever. But we're putting Enda on now. Okay, so that's happening. Cody-san has suddenly left home.
Yes.
Echo Fox didn't explain it all. I don't necessarily disagree with some of the changes the Echo Fox made, but they never described why they were making them or gave anyone any sort of hint. So it just all felt really random compared to what Cloud9 were saying, being like very united in terms of their message with every move that they made. Just gives a better idea. And most crucially, I think, is they swapped out their imports. I think in NA, people look at swapping out your imports as like, oh God, but these are the stars, and NA
the chosen few.
NA players are not good enough to be traded out for, star carries, right? That's not. Yeah, so I think the fact that they showed a willingness to bring in not just like a rookie NA talent, but also NA talent that didn't really foster or didn't really grow up and say, okay, we're willing to invest time into Golden Glue, for example. We're willing to invest time into these guys and also say that these guys could be the next Jensens, maybe.
Okay. All right. Let's go then and move to the EDG Fnatic series. I just wanted to start in this place, right? So I'm actually going to take what people might think is like a contrarian position initially, which is you have, unlike Cloud9, who, yes, didn't really get the full credit until they'd won this series. And then even then, yes, unfortunately, because they played a Korean team, it's logical that most people's position, because of Korean teams being so good in the past, including Afrika Freaks earlier in the year, it's mostly about what they did wrong as opposed to what Cloud9 did right. On the Fnatic side of the equation, I feel like this series was the opposite. Despite what I saw in the series, everything was just like, actually, let's just ignore the uncomfortable part where Fnatic wasn't very good, and let's just make it that they were awesome the whole way. The whole world's, they've been great. They're still going, guys. We've all got our Fnatic flags, that euphoria. They're going to win. It's awesome. And what I found kind of alarming about this series was the amount of times in the series where EDG was doing good shit early on and they were like leading in the game, or they like punished a move that the Fnatic players did, or obviously they even won a game. Like, what would you say to this aspect? Was Fnatic a bit ropey in this one? I mean, EDG in theory was one of the worst teams in the quarterfinals.
We tried.
But basically, when you say that they punished Fnatic, I think it was less punishing Fnatic and more punishing Caps specifically. I mean, they just.
Dude, Caps is the chosen one. You're not allowed to even say that this guy ever had a bad game at Worlds. He was a god until about 5 seconds ago,
Well, but they had a specific.
I think his team carried him.
Yeah. In this series, EDG had a very specific game plan for how they were going to attack Caps, because there's a particular way that Caps likes to go and trade in lane, based on guest information, and basically they path slightly differently to how you would expect, so that Caps, the windows where Caps normally goes in, they were always there to punish him aggressively. And I think that this was a smart plan. I mean, I think EDG just in a vacuum were probably the weakest team who qualified for the final 8 at this World Championships, but they had a plan and they followed through with this plan. Fnatic, Bwipo and Reckless definitely had excellent series, and I mean luck was on their side. I mean there was the funniest moment at this entire World Championships that I've seen was in Game 3 in the final game deciding fight, where EDG have a perfect engage. They split front line, Fnatic front line and back line. They have a Kai'Sa, so Kai'Sa dives in to kill the tanks. She's 1 versus 2 against tanks, about to kill them and turn on the carries, and then her Poppy ults Yasuo from more than a screen away, right next to her, when she's also attacking 2 tanks and CC'd, and Caps just turns around and kills her, point blank. Even though they've executed the fight almost flawlessly until that point. And sometimes as an AD carry, there's nothing you can do.
So before I talk a little bit about the series, I actually wanted to ask, do you think that EDG would have beaten Afrika?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the problem EDG have always had, have had for this year, is that they have exceptionally strong individual mechanical players, but whenever they get leads, they're incapable of closing the game. They don't advance their vision lineup. They don't bake Baron well, and most of their games seem to end in team fights, which come about either as a result of the enemy team catching up, staying in the game, and trying to fight them, or some sort of a play around Baron that the other team tries to start Baron, or they go and try to bait Baron without good enough vision, and it just deteriorates into a very messy team fight where they sort of outplay the other team. And EDG, throughout the series, even with their early leads, they were never able to choke Fnatic out of the game, simply because they didn't control enemy jungle properly, even with their leads. But I think they had a very good game plan to play against Fnatic. I think that if they tried to play against Fnatic in any other way, this would have been a 3-0. Whereas this series could easily have gone 5 games.
Yes. I mean, I really thought, I was amazed that so many people, I don't even see very much criticism of Fnatic. It feels like people just went, well, whatever, it doesn't matter if it was close or not. They won the series, they're through. It's like, a lot of these games look ropey as fuck.
It feels like people didn't watch the games, actually, by and large. I know LS, for example, literally didn't watch the games. For a lot of people,
he actually
Fnatic were
admitted
just
as much, yeah.
expected to beat EDG, and as a result, they didn't watch it. Oh, Fnatic 3-1 EDG. There you go. They got lucky once. Move on. Wouldn't surprise you if most people hadn't watched it. I agree with Peter that particularly, I think it was game 3 where they had Camille Tom. That game 3? They had Camille jungle and Tom bot. That was definitely a composition that was just looking to shut down Caps. I also think that they got some really good matchups. The first game, I don't know if it was a scouting issue or whatever, but they blind pick Irelia and still put it mid lane versus a rotated LeBlanc. I didn't understand that at all. And he seemed to be in some pretty bad matchups. Even game 4, Scout was on a favorable matchup, Syndra versus LeBlanc. And what really pushed it for me with EDG, and why I don't think they could really ever have won this series, is they seem to have no clue how to set up the map after a point. In that particular game, it was Syndra Lee Sin versus Nocturne LeBlanc. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it was that. That wins 2v2 on the side lane. But what happened was, and Fnatic did this every game actually, it was rather interesting, but the first game they did it a slightly different way. But the Fnatic's game plan at this point was all right, you're behind, you don't understand how to trade with Syndra, clearly we're going to have to go over this in practice till later, but now you're going to exist in these pockets of vision we have playing to Bwipo, or randomly pockets of vision we have topside. Why do we have pockets of vision topside? Oh, Syndra has also abandoned top lane, like we were abandoning top lane, and it's just permanently grouping together with us, even though they easily win 2v2 top, even though theoretically at this point LeBlanc can't actually trade with Syndra even 1v1 top. Fnatic chose to make that a dead lane because they were playing from behind. They were giving up some tempo to try to make picks with Caps and try to get back into the game. But EDG also opted, let's keep this as a dead lane, even though there's no reason for that whatsoever. And LeBlanc is never forced to be anywhere other than these small pockets. Sure. And every time they traded one of these pockets, LeBlanc was able to make another pick and they got back in the game. But this was such a fundamental misunderstanding of how to play mid to late game from EDG that it really blew my mind, to be honest. They secured really good matchups.
Honestly, for me, I didn't even think that EDG played early game better than Fnatic, just in terms of understanding and identifying what lanes or what they need to get ahead. in order for their composition to play out properly. And some of the stuff that they went for is like, okay, we're pulling all of our pressure from mid and top, and we're just going to all in on hoping this Kaisa can do something. And then there were a lot of situations where a lot of their lead was in kills, but they weren't getting dragons. They weren't getting vision control and rivers, so they couldn't snowball that, and they couldn't extend that anywhere. Meanwhile, you had like extra waves for free up on their solos. And so for me, it was like Fnatic were saying, this is fine. We are misplaying a little bit. Like our 1v1s are kind of falling down, or maybe we're getting ganked where we shouldn't get ganked. But overall, like our game plan is good. And you could see that in certain situations where Fnatic are actually coordinating the backs of their bottom lane to go mid because they anticipate that EDG is going to send maybe someone mid. And then, that Ray comes and he tries to catch the wave, and nothing is because Scout can't get his back off properly, even though Haro came to kind of guard his back, but he still doesn't get his back off, and Ray comes down, and it's just like kind of a gut reaction. We aren't planning steps in advance, whereas Fnatic are at least thinking about, okay, this is what I have to do in 3 minutes. How can I make sure that happens now?
Sure. But the interesting thing is, this has been EDG for the entirety of this Worlds. I mean, like, this is why EDG lost to Infinity. This is why EDG struggled to beat Mad Team. This is why... they weren't pushed by Detonation Focus Me, but they've had these issues throughout the World Championship. And just compared to Cloud9, since we were just talking about Cloud9 recognized their issues in the group stage. They recognized why they were struggling to beat Gambit, and they fixed these issues come the group stage and come the quarterfinals. And EDG are the exact same EDG that they were in the play-ins, but now they can't get 6-0 before their jungler is level 6. And this is the EDG that lost to Fnatic. So, I mean, I suspect that EDG are going to have to go away from this tournament and have a think about what they want to do now. Because this has been a problem for the whole of this year. There was a very high chance that EDG wouldn't qualify for Worlds. I mean, I was surprised that they qualified for Worlds. I thought Rogue Warriors would go. Yeah. And they somehow managed to drag their way through. But it's very clear that this is as far as they can go right now.
And in famous LPL coach fashion, Nofe already resigned. Anyway.
I mean, Europe had a team like that as well. Like, no one expected G2 to go to Worlds, and obviously they played as poor as possible. And if they actually, when they meet a real team, it's going to be really difficult for them to actually move forward in the tournament, I think. So... I sympathise with you entirely.
He did it on purpose, Peter, to trigger you. We'll get to that later, mate. We'll get to that later. Like, you have to understand, come on, man, how are you going to get baited by that directly one-on-one to your face? Come on, man. He wasn't even tweeting there. Like, so we'll get there. So here's a question before we wrap up the EDG part. Like, surely one of the bright spots on EDG, despite the team problems they had, and they clearly were never going to win any games that involved like macro, was iBoy. I mean, compared to some of the things I've seen in the past, was it? No, for Worlds in general.
Everybody memes about iBoy, but the time when he jumped in to...
Unfortunately, that last one you're referring to now, Peter, has ruined everyone's mental because they're going to think he's an idiot. But I thought some other games where he looked amazing.
But actually, what iBoy's trying to do there is he didn't jump in as soon as the third stack hit. Okay, he jumped in just when he thought that the third stack was going to expire when he finished his jump. But he miscalculated. He miscalculated on the jump, and he's actually, if he jumped 0.2 seconds or 0.3 seconds later, those stacks would have fallen off, and he would have been in the middle of the team with no stacks. But he mistimed it, either by nerves or Twitch reactions or something like this, so that he was too early, and as a result, he looked like an idiot. But that was the he actually, I don't think he actually played that badly in this series. But I think he's been pretty good over this tournament. He's matured into a very solid player and obviously primary carry for EDG. And I mean, I think that where would you say he ranks in terms of Chinese AD carries? Would you rate him over SMLZ right now, Kelsey?
No, I think SMLZ is the second best Chinese AD carrier right now.
Okay.
After UCI. So.
Okay. So he's right up there though in the group that's chasing.
I would say this sounds a little silly, but I would say has a slight edge over Jackie Love in terms of consistency. But I think once Jackie Love overcomes a lot of his stage fright issues, Jackie Love is easily better than him. Yeah. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think Scout definitely had an insanely good series, though, if we're going to like label one particular player, like what he did with his advantages. I think a lot of his advantages came from draft, but a lot of his advantages appear to have also come from Caps just forgetting how to play key matchups, which was rather surprising. Granted that the Camille Tarn composition, the whole world was against him there, but I don't think that was an excuse for doing things like WQing level 3 into Syndra as LeBlanc or anything like this. Also, I question where the decision to blind pick Irelia is coming from without banning LeBlanc first. Like, theoretically, Irelia will still win after she gets Trinity Force, but that's like a long way to that. Where LeBlanc, you can't do anything to a LeBlanc, and Scout really seemed to know what to do with pressure. So I thought Scout played the map really well. Like,
I remember people talking about this series as like, well, Caps actually didn't do that well versus Rookie overall. Like, even if he's in losing matchups, he didn't play that well in the losing matchups. But Scout is no rookie, you know. And then obviously Scout came in and still had a pretty good series. So
yeah. But just on the subject of JackeyLove, one of the players who's really impressed me this tournament is actually Reckless, which I mean may seem a bit weird to say, but he has outperformed iBoy. He's outperformed JackeyLove in their games against Invictus, and he's looked really, really good at this tournament, especially compared to how he's looked at previous worlds when it was all about bot lane. Now, ironically, the worlds where it's not about bot lane and his support's leaving him all the time to go towards mid, he's just beating all these AD carries 1v1.
It's back in his old wheelhouse, mate.
It's actually insane because I feel like Reckless is gone kind of unnoticed, but because everyone was looking at Caps and everyone is like super high on Whippo, but like Caps is like super high key, and not Caps, Reckless is super high key carrying the team. Yeah. Like, it's actually insane how good he's been. And when everyone, like, if Caps has a bad game, you know, Fnatic can still win. But when Reckless is playing Ezreal and doesn't match the enemy AD carry ever, like, that's an easy lose. Like, that's a fast lose. So.
Okay. I mean, as you said there, one of the issues with Fnatic is because the praise heaped on them is so overwhelming and there's so many competing narratives that there is no time to even discuss Reckless because it's all about, like, the hype from Caps coming in the world seemingly just hasn't worn off. Like, that's still, like, people repeat the same things. Then, obviously, there's the whole, like, Whipple's got his, like, own licorice thing of, like, oh, he's a rookie, how's he doing this? Holy shit, the carries! And then, at the same time, you have everyone who's like, Broxer, what the fuck? He's so amazing. Right, what about that, then? What about Brox's impact on Fnatic? What has that been like, do you think?
I'm going to give this one to Kelsey. She has very strong views on Broxer. So
I spent so much time, especially last year, like telling people, no, Broxer isn't that good. He's actually really dumb. Yeah. Like, you know, all of these solo lanes are so strong, and then he has so many decisions to make, and he always uses, like, the least creative one possible, and it's just, every path, every game is the same, and this is why, like, going into this spring, I was like, okay, it's actually super easy to prepare against this Fnatic roster or whatever. And so, but this tournament, yeah, it was, like, the only game we won. But this tournament...
Until we made playoffs. Okay, let's be real here, all right?
This tournament... Broxah is actually really good. I think he's been performing really well, even in games where it looks like he's getting completely dumped. I would say there was one game in this tournament where he gets dumpstered by the enemy team, and the draft was just like kind of a really non-starter, really bad draft for the jungle. Hillsong dying level 1 obviously happened this series, but otherwise, I feel like he's been really smart about what he needs to do. Even when he has losing lanes, even when his lanes are a bit falling apart, he has a good ability to answer, and he's in the correct place at the right time. He's being able to play somewhat defensively when he needs to. He is identifying that, okay, in this Yasuo versus Syndra matchup, I need to kind of relieve some pressure early on. Like, all of these types of things he's constantly thinking about, and you can see him making these decisions, and I actually am really high on Broxah this tournament. I think that he's... like, the best jungler is between him and Svenskeren, and you could argue that Svenskeren has had easier and more open opportunities than Broxah. So.
I think it's like a really common thing right now to basically throw the majority of Fnatic's success this tournament to Broxah. Like, he has had a very good tournament. He's definitely not the jungler that I thought he was going to come in and be. I'm definitely not able to sit here and say that I disagree with Fnatic's jungle philosophy right now as I did for the playoffs. But I definitely think that the way Fnatic decided to play around Bwipo and the way Bwipo played out his matchups had a huge impact on how they defeated EDG. And I also think in lieu of that as well, you obviously don't have to throw praise onto Reckless, because Reckless was essentially being abandoned at points and had to become the bot that he never really wanted to become. But I do think in terms of what Bwipo would do with his pressure, the amount of control they were able to get around Bwipo, and the few windows they were able to get despite being constantly behind in tempo. Granted, EDG would always be willing to match them for this, was really significant for how they'd win. All these pockets that that Caps was able to play in despite being so far behind were pockets that only opened up because Bwipo, you could guarantee he was winning his matchup. That being said, this does go back to an earlier point I was making about how the Chinese teams are picking Shen. They're picking Sion. I can understand Sion more than the Shen, but they're picking all of these kinds of low-impact matchups where you are going to be behind tempo on this side of the map. And apparently after they take the first tower bot lane ceases to be anything but a mid lane bot, and they are no longer playing side lane for whatever reason after that. And then it's all Bwipo territory, and Bwipo was just significantly outperforming his counterpart. They clearly had a better understanding of the meta, and you always have to throw some variety of that to players, and they were just getting more out of it. He was breaking open these games in Fnatic's favor, situations that they should not be broken over in, and probably wouldn't be against a better team.
Yep.
Like G2.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really have a lot more to add than that. I think that he's clearly been a top 2 jungler at this tournament. Probably top 1, given that his
just means
lanes...
best, Peter. Come on, you're not in Europe anymore, mate. Like, you're with people who speak English as native language again.
No, there are 4 junglers left. Okay, is he top 50% or is he just the best?
Yep.
But I think this is like we're all arguing about which player to credit more with Fnatic, and that's why. I feel like
their stay. Like he gave Reckless, you gave Fox, and I gave Bwipo. So
I think you can't, but you can. Like there have been bad games from each player, but there have also been like really phenomenal games from each player. I would say. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is a team that has like almost the dream of you can carry from X position and it'll be really good. And obviously we haven't really mentioned Hylissang, but I really think Hylissang, when he's playing Braum, is a huge factor on this team as well. So.
Yeah. And that was something that they were missing this game for sure. Like usually the game plan is, all right, support, you're going mid. All right, Boxer, you're going mid. All right, Soaz, you're going mid. Like everybody is pile driving for caps, and that wasn't really happening this game with Hylissang because EDG were just playing so hard to bot, and also were killing him in the jungle before minions had even spawned. So there was a little bit of an issue there. But I think I want to touch on something that I did notice, and I just want to give it like some air at the very least, is that the way that Fnatic changed from game 1 to game 3, not game 1 to game 3, but game 1 to the rest of the 3 games, like the big significant change that they made, given that Caps was behind, what they were doing in the mid game for game 1 was that they were still putting Caps on the sideline so he could get farm and he could catch up, and they were taking Bwipo, who was the only player on their team that was ahead, basically on a roam magical journey between mid and Caps' lane, and they were playing around Bwipo like this. They were dragging him as like the focal point by which they wanted to start fights, and then they realized they were just never going to get advantage any part of the map doing that, and then the rest of the games you have instead Caps from behind playing around the pockets that Bwipo is creating with pressure. But that was a significant difference that occurred between first and second game, and that's something that I really like to see, because this is such a huge change in how they are setting up the map in mid game that I'm really confident if Cloud9's macro does throw curveballs their way, that they are actually capable of having the discussion of how they are going to adapt between games. Seeing a change like that was really significant for me, and seeing it coming from like a rookie player, like this is somewhat of a meme. Like people will always say like, oh, you don't expect a rookie player to do so good, but he basically changed playstyles between game 1 and game 2 when it came to the mid game. He traded off his understanding of how he should be playing with Swain for a completely different one. And that is impressive. And I do like how confidently they switch between the two. And I do think that the moment that they made that logical leap that they need tempo in at least one lane, and they don't keep having to funnel everything into Caps when he's 0-4 in Irelia, like, I think that leap and Whippo being able to take that and do what he did with it is really significant, gives me a lot of confidence going forward, and is another reason why I'll praise Whippo for this series, because I haven't always been Whippo's biggest fan. Definitely coming into this series, not to say that I think he's a bad player, I definitely thought that I would always bet money on putting Soaz instead.
Yes.
Like, if I wanted somebody to guarantee, if you were to ask me right now to build an EU team of the players at Worlds that is guaranteed to win, Soaz would be my top laner. Probably even still now, sorry, Whippo, we'll probably change our mind in the semi-finals or whatever. But this series, it was really encouraging to see that he could be that reliable player, that adaptive player that I would always associate with Soaz. He's clearly learning from the best.
Well, let's have that discussion then, because obviously one of the problems here with the fact that everyone's raving about Whippo and they've won so many games with him is that Soaz is in some sort of mad cursed monkey paw scenario where he was like, all those seasons they made him play tanks because it was obviously better, and they're like, come on now, Soaz, you know this is the global meta, son, you've got to play this way. He's like, sure, I'll do whatever it takes to win. And then he's like, he goes to the fucking bazaar, you know, in Agrabah or whatever the fuck it is, you know, right before it closes. He finds the old merchant. He gets the monkey paw. He goes, right. He makes and they go, be careful. Whatever you ask for comes true. And then he says, all I want is a Worlds where you play carries and through top lane as well. And they're like, your wish is granted. And then all of a sudden, this like Belgian guy goes, all right, mate. What we're going to do next season in Fnatic? He goes, what the fuck are you doing? And he goes, oh, I'm joining as well. He goes, I play carries exclusively though. Like, what? No! Like, now he doesn't even play, and now they're definitely going to have to win Worlds to make that scenario really be truly cruel at the end.
I feel like Whippo would also say, I'm also cheaper, and then Soaz would really yell no, so...
It's even better because you had the brief period where it's like, oh, but Reckless isn't playing, Whippo's in the bottom lane now, you know.
All happy families, exactly. Yeah, we can coexist. This is fine.
Cruel,
we can coexist. This is cool. In fact, you know what? I loved Whippo. I love seeing him develop and stuff. I think it's cool. Yeah.
Wait, you get 2 lanes from Whippo for not even the price of 1. It's insane, actually. Holy God!
Put it this way: how is Soaz ever supposed to become the true starting top laner again when they don't even let him play carry? So as a result, how is he supposed to prove he's really good? And secondly, if they ever have this stupid meta switch again, he can just. There's more of an advantage to having Whippo. By the way, Veteran, I'm on your side. I think Soaz is a better player. But if you can't ever get to show it because the other guy plays the other role you want to do.
He has shown it on carries.
Occasionally.
That's why I disagree with this. Last year, World Championship...
I'm talking about this Worlds. You are doing that thing where you're telling me your opinion without listening to mine, mate.
No. Okay, yeah, but obviously I can't stay on this Worlds because he hasn't been able to show a single carry performance.
That's the point of what I just said. You missed the whole point.
But Sion... His Sion is actually a carry champion. Like, let's be honest. Like, this champion does, like, decimate 75% of every health bar when Soaz is playing it. So, it's
Veteran, I'll make it really concise. The reason why Soaz can never be the solo starting top laner is because they don't let him play the carries. That is someone else's job. So, I agree with you. He could do it. But since they're never going to let him... How can he do it?
I honestly...
You know what I mean?
The thing is though, that they don't need to know that he can do this. They know he can do this. The reason he's not doing it is most likely down to money. Whippo is just cheaper. That's
and so they're seeding for the future that regardless they're going to have to eventually transition.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, fair enough. But okay, let's have that discussion though.
You can't say that he doesn't. Like okay, you can yell at me again if you want, but last year at Worlds, the only game that they won against Ireland...
Can we all just agree 1 second? Pause this 1 second. Right, I'll let you finish, Veteran. Can the rest of us in the chat agree that I'm definitely not saying what Veteran's saying now? We'll definitely let Veteran finish what he's saying. The rest of you both understand that I absolutely agree that Soaz can, because that was my central premise at the beginning. So we're going to definitely let Veteran finish that. He'll finish that, and then we'll have the discussion that we were trying to have, which is, what do you think about the contrast between the players? Now, unpause, Veteran, finish what you said on that one, mate.
It doesn't matter whether he can or not, though. It matters whether Fnatic know that he will and think he's... If they thought that he was reliable and it was just about whether he's reliable on carries, as you say, he would be starting. They would have no need for Bwipo. That's why
Veteran,
it's down-
I could be the best president of the United States ever, but I can't because they don't let me be. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, but they have let him be in the past. And then what?
It's amazing, isn't it? He doesn't get it still. It's all right, Veteran. I'm fine with it, mate.
Do you get, though, that they already have, and then they opted to stop that?
Yeah, so what you're saying is they don't let him anymore. You're right, I agree. Yeah, I agree. They don't let him anymore. You're right, yeah. So if they don't let him, then how can he?
If they don't let him, then how can he what?
If you don't open a door and you lock the door, how can I come through the door? You're right. If the door was open, I could unlock the door. You're never going to get this one, mate. It's okay. We've got everyone else is getting it.
Yeah, but then what you're saying is basically a useless conversation. I'm talking about how he can take the starting spot back from Bwipo. That's what I thought the conversation was.
No, that would be a great conversation. Yeah, go on and explain it to me.
I mean, again, I simply think that it's going to just come down to money in the end because I think that he has already shown that he can be that player. There's no reason that they wouldn't.
What's so weird is, in the end, you ended up basically saying what I was saying, which is that he could, okay, but he can't. You see the difference between the two? He can't because they won't allow him to do it.
So
they won't allow him to do it, Veteran. And you're agreeing with me because of money.
Yeah, I'm saying the reason.
Yeah, that's the point. We're both. By the way, you know the whole time we've agreed on that entire point. It's just for some reason you thought I was arguing. I don't know why. I started out by saying I thought Soaz was better. For some reason you seem to think that I legitimately don't believe he can play carries, which wouldn't make sense in the context of the whole Cursed Monkey Paw thing. Why would he want to?
What I was saying was an expansion on why I thought that it had to be about money, and I thought it had to be about money because
that's a great point. You've made a very good point there that people probably haven't have thought of. Yeah. So I'm trying to contrast it in this way, which is so you've basically stated your point, which is you actually would prefer
and then I was
Soaz.
Expanding on it, and you thought that was the antithesis of your point.
Well, how were you expanding on it then?
Because I was explaining why I think it's about money. I don't just pull that out of my hat.
Because they know that's a great point. Let's expand on that then, Veteran. That's a great point, but this is the question. If it's about money, then they're not going to go back to Soaz as the pure starting top lane, right?
Yeah, which is sad.
Okay, so then this is the point that maybe you think is the point of this discussion. Why should they go back to it?
Why should they? Because he can do way more than just carries, and he's a top laner who's just sitting there. I honestly don't know how much they would have to spend for him, and I don't know how much of that they're going to try to peg onto caps or anything like this. Like, I assume it's having to go somewhere, but I think they should keep him if they want to win. But I don't think they have infinite money either. I think
but before we finish, before we get the others in, just to finish up this part. Why then? Because people who are just watching this Worlds are going to think, what are you on about, Veteran? Like, Whipple's doing amazing. Like, he's obviously the future. Stick with him. Like, why would you either opt to keep Soaz or potentially even choose him over Whipple? Why wouldn't you just say, let's go with Whipple, he's the future? Why not go in that angle?
The meta's not going to be static to this. And I think that when we saw Whippo's debuts was actually on tanks. His debuts were on Scion. And Fnatic were hardcore playing towards topside when he was doing this, like really hardcore playing towards topside. And this isn't a level of inflexibility that Soaz has ever demanded from his team. And yet Soaz is always being able to perform. I don't think I've ever seen anybody this reliable. I think that if he ever does become a free agent based on this, that he's going to be one of the most valuable top laners.
How did the rest of you contrast it? It doesn't have to go down the route, obviously, of like deciding in the future whether we keep him or not. I just mean, how would you contrast it this Worlds? Because again, the prevailing narrative is, like, you only want Soaz to play tanks. That's what people think. And Whipple, obviously, the whole thing is they put him in to play the carries and then he's one of the central players. So how would the rest of you contrast this scenario? Or your opinion on which you prefer or you think's better, whatever. Whichever way you want to go on it. It's a pretty open-ended question.
So do you want to go first, Kelsey, or should I?
I mean, I think Soaz is better, but I do think that the rate of improvement that Whippo has shown is actually nice. And so I don't think he's a bad choice, but I think that if Soaz does become a valuable free agent, as you've suggested he might, or does become a free agent, he becomes like easily the most valuable free agent in Europe, in general. Like he's a very, very strong player, and some of the stuff that he does isn't just down to how he plays out the lane or how he plays out X champion. It's more he can just understand when he can make a player, when he can do something towards mid, or when he can do something towards bottom lane, or when he can TP, or when he can go for an engage. And he's just like really, really smart about stuff that I think a lot of top laners don't even necessarily think about because they're focused on how I'm going to play my matchup out. when should I get my back for this item? And I think that SOAS just does so much more in terms of thinking about what he can do in his role.
Do you think that Fnatic would have played better if SOAS played in this series?
I played better. It's such a weird question. Because it's a weird question because I feel like yes, but it would be in a way that I couldn't predict. You know.
So the reason I asked that question is because I think that right now Fnatic. So I don't even want to talk about next season because we're in the middle of Worlds. Let's focus on the semifinals and the finals. But the thing I think that having Fnatic and Fnatic having Whipper and SOAS does is it allows them against teams who want to focus mid hard, such as EDG. It allows them to have somebody who can play really recklessly, like a Season 6 or Season 7 VeXii, who can go in the top lane and who can fight the other guy to the death 1v1 and force you to not focus on caps. And I think that if you're against a team that is more willing to invest resources into top, and you're going to want to play towards the rest of the map against, such as Cloud9, for instance, I feel that SOAS is a better person to play into Cloud9, and I think Whippo is a better person to play into EDG. And I think that the reason why Fnatic looks so good in this series was because they got pressure from their side lanes when EDG pressured mid. And if you ask me, out of SOAS and Whippo, who I thought is the better player right now, there's no question it's SOAS. But if you ask me who would I rather have in a series where I know the jungler isn't going to come top, I know top lane is going to be a 1v1, and I know that if I want somebody to beat up the other guy 1v1 and fight him to the death, I would rather have Whippo. And I think putting Whippo in forces the other team to switch their strategy from attacking caps. And I don't think you can attack both caps and Whippo that easily. And that's one of the reasons why I think having that flexibility really helps in the series. And I actually think they're going to use SOAS in game 1 at least against Cloud.
Okay. Right, well, you've neatly led us in then, since we've done the first two semis. Let's just go into the first two quarters. Let's just do the semi that we've set up from this, and then we'll do the other side of the bracket. So you've neatly led there, actually, Peter, into a topic that transitioned from that I wanted to discuss, which is, so when people talk about Worlds being the narrative of it's like the solo laners, and particularly they want it to be it's the star solo laners and the carry solo laners, one of the reasons why I actually was favouring on other shows SOAS over Whippo was exactly this reason, which is like, again, this is purely layman analysis, obviously. In the scenario in which my other team does have a carry top laner, if top lane really is, as people try to claim, like that's the one where if you get it ahead by the most kills, it's the best position to have over AD carry or whatever people say, I'd rather have SOAS just soak up the pressure up there and waste their time than have my AD carry or whatever just have to do fuck all, and then the mid and top's what decides the game. So obviously that's the most layman analysis version of it, but now that we match Fnatic up against Cloud9, what do you think of the top lane aspect there? You kind of opened it up already, Peter, so maybe just expand on that a bit.
Yeah, no, I think that basically it's going to be very difficult for Cloud9 to win this series unless Licorice goes off. And given that SOAS is more stable and more consistent, and Whippo, for all, I mean, he's a very solid mechanical player and he's very good on carries. There are things that he does in the laning phase and trades and choices that he chooses to make that mean that the matchup can swing aggressively one way or the other. And this is against a team like Cloud9 who are going to need a lot of contribution from their top laner. I think it is more dangerous to use Whippo against that team, and I think they should start themselves. For sure.
Okay. Where's everyone else come down on this?
No, I fully agree with what you just said there, to be honest. Like, we can call Whippo like really mechanically good, but then he was making decisions like when Shen comes back with a first ice and spirit visage, he was trying to take trades against that as Victor, and that's really not a scenario that you can actually win as Victor. So I think that he needs a lot more experience before I would trust him in that kind of scenario, and I would definitely put SOAS in over Whippo. I also think, just to answer your question, I actually do think that the macro change they made between Game 1 and Game 2 versus EDG would not have had to have occurred. I think they would have played towards SOAS's lane if SOAS was playing those matchups. So I think it would have changed things. Theo?
Okay.
Okay. I think what's interesting for this is that if you look at the way that Cloud9 was playing out, is that they were focusing a lot more towards the bottom side in their series against Africa. Even when, in the third game, when Africa changed up their strategy and were playing like the Varus, you had situations where bottom lane was trying to be a 3v3 with the jungler. So I'm not sure if C9 will go for that approach. Like they seem to have what I believe Fnatic also kind of have at this point, which is that your bottom lane gets the first turret and you rotate your bottom lane, and at a point, like, you might have a top laner who has Klepto like Whippo, or you have a top laner who's able to still try to 1v1 the enemy top laner a little bit and just like kind of put more of your resources into your jungler or your AD carry. So I think that we might even see a similar game, but I still think that SOAS would have been better in the Fnatic series. So the EDG series. So I still would say that SOAS should be played versus Cloud9.
Like Veteran, it was actually Peter that made the bold claim there that basically Cloud9 won't win unless Licorice goes off. Right? That is the ultimate alley-oop to you if you're going to try and fuck with the NA fans at this point. So are you going to say, is Fnatic going to crush Cloud9?
They should. They should.
On what basis?
On the basis they have better players in basically every position, and they have a better
there we go. He's got it.
In basically every position.
Okay. Yes, that's the hyperbole I wanted.
The problem is that, as true as that is, Caps can't play like he was just playing. And it's really annoying because Caps, the way Caps approaches his own development and has always approached his own development and approached mid lane as a result, basically makes him like a really good matchup into Jensen. Like, he should be. This should be his element, to be honest, playing against the mid laner like Jensen.
Why?
And okay, so Caps has always been the kind of guy that is just going completely ham no matter what. Like, okay, so there are videos you can find of him way back in Challenger series where he's basically straight inting. This is the only way that this guy has ever developed. This guy never thought, we need to calm down right now, okay? I'm going to freeze the wave in front of here I know I'm playing Varus. I'm going to freeze the wave in front of here for a bit, all right? And I get some vision here, but I'm scaling up and getting to... He's never been this kind of player. Okay, and he should stylistically be really good against the Nuke Ducks, against the Jensens, against I'm even going to say Feathermans of the world, and he should develop into a state where he's going to comfortably take on these guys every time. He's developing in a very unique manner. But if his matchup understanding is the same as it was against EDG, and if the way that they draft is the same way they've been drafting this whole tournament, I do worry, because he was not getting good matchups in the group stage either. They had an obsession with blind picking Swain that I still don't quite understand. And now they still opting into really dumb blind picks for him instead of trying to tailor draft specifically to him, like Cloud9 was doing every time that they were on red side. Cloud9 had some disgusting matchups for Jensen. And I really do trust him. He should win this. There's no world in my head where I'm thinking that he shouldn't be confident going into here and thinking that this is a free lane for him.
Has that drafting element been connected to the Whippo angle? Like they've just been putting too much focus on him? And thinking Caps is just so good he's going to make it anywhere?
Not necessarily, because, like, for example, in the EDG series, Fnatic picked Ornn when Camille was already on the board. And at that point, if EDG just go a different jungler and throw the Camille top lane, it's a really bad matchup for Whippo. I don't necessarily think Fnatic were nerfing draft just to secure Whippo a really strong matchup each time. You're going to disagree on Camille versus Ornn, aren't you, Peter? I do think the way that they have been picking and rotating is very strange. Broxah was the guy who, if anything, was nerfed by the way that Fnatic came in to the series drafting. Like, Elise into Xin Zhao is an ouch really fast, by the way, especially after that level 1.
But I'm not gonna ask that. But the thing that I was thinking in my head is, given everything that you've just said about Caps and everything that we both know about Jensen, is Xin Zhao a first pick in this series?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like Xin Zhao is just big man in this series.
I almost went on to basically, I'm so glad that they switched into early priorities in Zhao, Lee Sin, all of the good shit in the EDG series, because if they were to do this against Cloud9, it's also a complete FF. But you have subsequently put it, they need to be early prioritizing jungler, because better jungler is going to win, so long as the laners actually understand what they're doing.
I think the bigger adaptation for me in the EDG series is something we haven't really talked about, which was like they suddenly went up in Braum priority. Because if you notice in the first game, Fnatic don't pick their support or their jungler in the first rotation. EDG see that and they're like, you know what? We're gonna ban Lee Sin and Braum because we're the only team that's actually bothered to scout Fnatic. But it's they deny those picks. I think Braum is actually a really, really big pick for them because it gets priority buy in a lot of the matchups that people are picking, and it also is a situation that allows them that bot laner to back first, go mid, and kind of facilitates a lot of the weird drafts that Fnatic have been doing around Caps, where Caps is blinding something because it's like, okay, if he's blinding and the enemy mid laner is extending here and has this priority, we can use Braum to like kind of go forward to E forward, get a good lockdown on that. Also, I think Braum was a big pick for Cloud9 as well in their series against Afrika. So for me, I think that Braum is also going to be extremely high priority in the series.
Also, synergizes really well with your favorite champ that is making a return on Fnatic's side. Which is a really good early rotation still, by the way, and you need to be looking to early rotate your bot lane and your jungler and get your solo laners really good matchups. So just go Xin, Braum, Sivir, you've done your draft. I've done your draft for you. Just go into the draft with that on red side and it's a free win every time. Do it on blue side, it's almost a free win, but you're mostly there.
I've determined that Sivir is again the strongest champion in the game. So
it's the sleeper OP at all times, Kelsey.
A little on that.
Yeah, no, she's not. You have to understand, veteran, on some low-key level, she's actually gone all the way around in, like, she's one of those people where when someone like Hotshot GG about 7 years ago would say stuff like, it's just how you play it out, bro. He was an idiot. But Kelsey's actually so advanced. She's gone through so many phases of evolution that eventually she got to the same position, but through like actually getting, like, there was a logic to get there, and in the end she arrived at the same thing. It's like if you did it correctly, it would be the sleeper OP. So it's like I respect it even if I don't know if it's true or not.
It's like the tired wired meme. There's like, it's all about how you play up your matchups in conjunction with the jungler wired Sivir picture.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Here.
all of the flow chart eventually leads to Sivir. It's just you have to sometimes go through about 5 different boxes, On Hotshots, he just wanted to play whatever champion he was talking about, and he'd be like, it was whatever, he actually didn't have any boxes between it, So what about this then?
She just does so much shit that whenever she's good, she's absurd, Like, she does too much shit, honestly. Yeah. So
she's like you when you were a journalist, She never got the credit she deserved. She was the backbone of the scene. She could do everything, but the problem is she wasn't flashy enough. She wasn't getting all the fucking Vayne hype. She wasn't like when people were playing Callista, Who gives a fuck about Callista, Travis Gafford? Like, it's all just about the big flash, the front page and stuff. You're not even that good. Like, it's just pretty one-dimensional, isn't it? So anyway, that's an awkward analogy, but that's basically my wheelhouse as well. So
I mean, it's wrong. Vayne is obviously the best AD carry in the game.
Of course. Only when Caps is playing.
Well, it counts as Sivir. Thoughts, Kelsey.
You know what? That's my favourite example ever, by the way, because even some of the smartest people in League of Legends
and win.
Anyway, does it have to?
even some of the smartest people in League still
better, so.
Even the smartest people in League still do have the big problem of not being able to delete the big moment from their mind. Like, I've heard people actually say stuff like, and Caps, he'll just play Vayne into something. He's like, he did that once. Why are we saying that as like why would that be in your top 5 things to talk about a Caps, man? Like, he's not even playing that team again. Like, is he? If anything, he did that as a one-off. That was the whole point. Like, it's not something he does, is it? Like,
every single team I've ever worked with has had Vayne banned against it in a competitive game. So.
There we go.
It just goes to show.
We just don't know that secretly everyone knows it's the most OP.
Jesus, man.
Like, here's a question for you. Kelsey, when we were discussing the Afrika C9 series, and we started out in very dangerous LS guest territory of explaining why some of the things Afrika was doing wrong set up Svenskeren and Cloud9 to be really good, etc. Does that in any way apply to this series? Like, will Cloud9 just play differently anyway? Will they respond to it? If they play in a similar fashion to how they did against Afrika, is it going to be tough to win? Are they going to be able to win?
So part of the reason why I was so concerned with Fnatic's early game is because I could see Cloud9 looking for some of the opportunities against Afrika that they looked for against Fnatic, and is this an issue? And when I went back and reviewed a lot of the early game stuff, it's like, okay, this is how Afrika should have played against this, right? If we have better scaling picks in this place, we need to just have a good idea that, if Cloud9 are going to overextend in this play, we'll just let them do that. And then when they get to the point where they're resetting late, we'll come through and we'll take the mid lane tier 1 turret, and we'll just make sure we're making some trade and staying in the game until it gets to a point where they just can't handshake us in any kind of team fight or anything of that nature. So for me, I see where Cloud9 are playing, and I see where Fnatic are playing, and I see a much better overlap for Fnatic than I did for Afrika.
Veteran, even though you said they, in theory, have all the better players, better understanding of the game, like you didn't list any negatives.
They're also sexier.
How do they simultaneously lose a game to IG and have all these ropey games against CDG? Isn't there a window here where the Fnatic that you idealise, right, doesn't show up in some of the games and it's a sloppy series or there's problems?
Immediately after that, I also did outline my concern that very well could be the case again. And I do think that the IG loss was definitely in part down to their insistence on never giving Caps a good matchup. I've stated many times that he's simply played a lot of these matchups poorly as well. Because I don't want people to think I'm making excuses for Caps. I definitely don't want Caps to start making excuses.
So you're not a fan then of the narrative of like, well, even if he was in a bad matchup, he didn't get completely crushed. He still did, he didn't like, I don't know what people thought he was supposed to do against Rookie, just chain feed or something, yeah.
I don't know if they watched the EGG series. He got crushed in that, so that excuse is out the fucking window.
Yes.
And that can never happen again.
I'll give people a tip. If you're a fan out there, this is a genuine tip. I'm not being condescending when I say this. If you start to sort of, basically you're experiencing a kind of cognitive dissonance, if you start to defend your favourite player and you're not defending him on like he did this correctly, he did this. It's more like you're saying, well, he didn't do it quite as bad as that, or it didn't go as bad. It's like, just ask yourself this one question. It's a really useful question to find out if you're basically just a fanboy, is what would he have had to do wrong before you'd have said it was a bad game? Like, and if you can't come up with an answer, except something ludicrous like chain feed 11 kills in a row, you're probably just way too emotionally attached to this player, Like, you have to admit sometimes that a player either doesn't live up to the hype that, here's the thing, he might be as good a player as you imagine, but he didn't do it in these games. Come on. You've got to admit. I'm a big fan of Europe, I love him, but come on, man. He hasn't lived up to the hype.
I still have full trust in Caps, though. I really do. I do have full trust in Caps. I don't think that there's any way that he came off of that series and did anything but figure out where he's weak, figure out how to be better, and I really hope that, especially if they had G2 as training partners this week, they were able to specifically tackle that kind of thing. Because some things I am worried about, if this is a matchup experience thing, is that North America is playing, and this is going to seem like a meme, but it legitimately worries me. They're playing stuff like Zillion and clicking compositions that have really good synergy with it, and that's just not something he will have scrimmed against unless he directly scrimmed Cloud9, or unless G2 are setting that up for him, or something like this. None of the Chinese teams are playing it, none of the Korean teams are playing, and as far as we know from interviews, they've mostly been playing Korean teams. So I do worry that Cloud9 throws some sort of curveball at him in the mid lane, and judging by how he's playing out poor matchups in the EDG series, then yes, there's a potential window, because again, Jensen is really good at transitioning that pressure to the rest of the map in a way that your best buddies over at TSM were not able to, even with Svenskeren. So there's the window, and if they transition that to top side and Licorice is able to go off and is facilitated from that, as Peter says, we're starting to drop games. We're just, quite frankly, starting to drop games, short of Reckless and Hylissang 2v2 killing with the most broken champion in the game, Sivir.
I will raise you that I think Zeyzal had a really good series, had a really strong series for Cloud9, and I think that if bot lane gets a good matchup, for C9 as well as mid getting a good matchup, then that is a very good window for Fnatic to lose. Because I think that they'll prevent Fnatic's bottom lane from influencing mid lane the way they often do. Caps will not perform as well in the laning 1v1, and that will be a situation where Fnatic struggle a bit more. And then, of course, it'll come down to if C9 can continue to play out and to inch through their advantages better than EDG did, and just like think more steps further in advance. And that's where obviously Fnatic can get back into the game, but that's where I see C9 perhaps winning at least one match.
I think that's fair. I think Zazor's decision making has actually been pretty good this tournament, even when the rest of his team were struggling a little, against Destination Focus Me and that sort of thing in play-ins. I think that Zazor will not make the mistake that Baolan has made, which is to automatically match Hylissang no matter where he goes. I think if Hylissang is willing to roam to mid to try to impact mid matchup, Zazor will be smarter about whether he matches it or whether they go all in on Reckless and deny him as much farm as possible, bot lane, which I don't think certain other teams Fnatic have played against have been smart in adjusting to.
Let's remember also that Zazor is the player that the Orcs stuck behind when replacing Smoothie, because we talked about Jensen Sneaky being benched because they were added back on. It's very easy to remember that they benched Smoothie, who literally everyone in this call, I think, would agree was the best support in North America by all metrics we were looking at. They replaced him with the rookie Zazor. Clearly, they were doing like actual work into their scouting, And they've stuck by it. They were never even tempted to go back. This is a results-focused team, so I think I tweeted like before the group stage began that if any team did well, I'd hope it was Cloud9 because I think they have the right attitude in actually trying to build a player base in North America by which they can draw from, which is always going to be the only real sustainable option, and it will always remain so. And other orgs aren't doing it. I hope other orgs look to Cloud9 now and they take that, especially if Cloud9 make the finals. Then that's literally the best thing possible for North America, is that this organization and no other make it. If TSM make it after buying more Europeans after a European got a green card, it's all over. If Team Liquid make it after just dumping dumb money in as many has-beens as possible, it's all over. But if Cloud9 make it, that's a legitimately good example, because all EU mids and junglers are awaiting new jobs, and top AD support is all free territory for North America, and that's more free territory than you guys ever had before. So there you go, have it.
See, my job in this call here, right, is as I watch the others, each time they're thinking, is this the one I go in on? Do I pick this one? No, wait, there's a better one coming later. Like, I won't let him trigger me on that one. So I watch them. I have to decide whether to initiate it as well. So yeah, go for it on that one. Or, as I saw before, right, to pull Kelsey off. He's not worth it. Just wait till later. Your chance on later. Which went way too deep on ahead of a whole series. And they started literally if we'd have just left the call there, Peter, they could have just gone through the whole series themselves before we even got there.
I've already anticipated which one I'm going to go in on.
Oh, don't worry, Peter. That's what I'm about to say. So first of all, to just close that last topic, I will just say
it's just indefensible. I'm not even going to bother with that one. It's just
I will just say to close up the topic of the angle you said there of Zazor and Smoothie. That's a perfect example of what is, I feel like, the most misunderstood concept every time I've ever talked to people who are fans or analysts of Western League of Legends, which is, yes, you can be a better player than someone, but they can be better for your team. And that's almost every debate I've ever had with someone. Like, Hodson versus Someday last year. But how could Someday be better if his team is not? It's like, fuck it. This is hurting my brain so badly right now. It's obviously a scenario of the team versus the player, mate. But let's just wrap that for a second. Veteran, this is the stage now, mate. I saved it until now. I was trying to make sure you didn't burn off too much energy there. This is the part of the show where we trigger Peter Dunn, okay? So G2 played against RNG, and RNG to charming, lovable, quirky, to charming, lovable, quirky people like Peter Dunn, who in their quaint little Hobbit-esque world, he thinks people like RNG were the best team in the tournament, and they were going to win the tournament, and they were a really good team, and something, I don't know, they bumped, they slipped, they goddamn tripped over and bumped their head, and somehow they lost to fucking G2. They lost to Wadid, they lost to Hjarnan, whose girlfriend probably probably right now has sent a bomb to Vidius's house. And all you need to know is that however it happened, it's a fucking travesty. But to pick up what you were saying, as a host, I have to be a piece of shit as a host and agree in a way with everyone. So, Veteran, why are RNG just fucking garbage, not even a good team, and G2 was better anyway? So come on, I've set it up fully there. Now
because
go.
Clearly, when you put any team in a room with a European team, they can't look like anything else.
That can't have been it. Come on, there's got to be more than that.
I feel like at this
They
point
play
we've
okay.
got
The same.
so
Okay,
far that
this is the
no one
problem.
understands the Robin reference anymore, and it's just
This
kind
is
of
the
hanging
problem.
out.
How can you not know the Robin reference? How can you not? I hate this. Like they take everything.
You've got to understand, Veteran fans. This is the principle you need to learn, right? And everyone is a content creator. It's a very simple one. It's not an exaggeration. Treat the public, the general viewing public, as if they all started watching League of Legends 10 months ago. Do that every second of your career, and you will always have your finger on the pulse of the community.
Yeah.
So, for example, even if something's last year's Worlds, imagine that it's not obvious to them. They don't know what you're referring to. So, unfortunately, in your case, you left the branding behind on that, mate. You should have kept it in some way. Even if you were in the picture, like the one of you on stage, you've got to have a pin on that's a little Robin pin or something, mate. You've got to have a little,
yes.
you know,
That
you got
would
to do some angle like that. Then people will
so
remember
good.
it, you know. Because obviously we discussed it on the last episode. The biggest crime is that you let them take Euphoria from you, mate. And now it is Euphoria. It literally is the moment of Euphoria. Now some idiots are even going to think Euphoria, because of that Fnatic picture, comes from the fucking BTS band. By the way, anyone who likes that kind of music, keep it to yourself. I have sexual perversions too, but I don't put them on fucking front street. Yeah, I know. So anyway, come on. What were the other reasons though? What were this G2 RNG series? Come on.
Okay,
Give me some
so
more.
it goes. But the problem with the G2 and G series and leaving it for this late, especially, is that this is the absolute epitome of what I was talking about when it comes to how the Chinese have opted to play this game, and also to a lesser extent how KT were opting to play this game, except they actually had carry top matchups. It was the absolute epitome of Uzi, you are our entire win condition. You pick the Lucian. You pick the. Oh God, they lost with Sivir. What does this do for you? They didn't even have Heimerdinger or Tom on the enemy team. Anyway, you pick your hard carry champions. We play directly to you. Let me can do whatever he wants. We don't really know why why Wonder is like 50 million CS and XP ahead. It's a mystery to us, but it doesn't really matter because our Shen is here, baby, and Uzi is going in. It was just a completely terrible read on the meta. It was uncharacteristic for them in relation to how they were playing last year, and I know Kelsey has really strong feelings on why that in particular might have changed, but they were definitely playing a way to win that worked at MSI, would have worked in spring, and would have worked last year like hell. It was the Ardent meta. But this year, that's not how we play the game. We play through our solo lanes, and there was a mismatch in the mid lane, and the top laner didn't even have a chance because of Daft Peter. I'm not necessarily insulting Let Me, though he would have been smashed.
No, listen, don't worry. Peter's about to basically say you're all wrong, talk mad shit, like rap battle you, but he's not going to do any of that because he's going to wrap it all up in the best possible, tamest language, and he's going to try to really just use in-game stuff to tell you that. So go on, let's go.
Peter, come on.
So I've been joking about all of this so far, but it's not just about solo laners. They should have put him on Vayne and put him into Wonder, and then it would have been.
There we go.
There you go.
Would have been game over.
There you go.
They never would have expected that.
They did do that in the regular season, you know. They put their
I remember
in the top lane, so yeah.
I remember that.
If only they put him on Vayne and they put him in the side into Wonder and put Let Me on Wave Clear Duty or something like this.
All I want is I wish I could go back in time and have Peter walk in with a translator to the RNG room before the series and go, right, here's how we play. And Uzi just goes, who the fuck is this guy? It's like, what? It'd be so amazing. It'd be unreal, wouldn't it? And what's great is, obviously, they wouldn't listen to him. They'd go play the series. And at the end, they'd have to realise he was right. He was right all along.
We did the Thorin and Loco versus Worlds episode where Loco wanted to be able to predict 3-0 with the caveat that he gets to text Kesman that he has to ban Heimer and Tom.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? That was good. It was good. I like that. Yeah.
Go on first one.
That absolutely.
No, keep going, mate. Keep going.
Someone else.
No, I mean, okay, so obviously it's obvious what happened in the series, right? G2 were able to get leads through mid and through top, and RNG were not able to snowball the game cleanly enough to win before G2 were able to win with their superior side lanes. I think.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
But I think that this series really shows one thing to me, which is that I've been thinking about for some time, which is that nobody doubts that Upset is a better AD carry than Hjarnan, right? Nobody doubts.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there is any world where G2 are in the semifinals of this World Championships if Upset is their AD carry instead of Hjarnan.
Yeah. No,
and I think that what happened in this series was Hjarnan has developed over the course of this year through the funnel meta, through the top lane,
the hard times, basically.
Yes, and he has honed his ability to not lose lane in a way that is incredibly impressive through like controlling the minion waves, pushing the minion waves at the right time, making sure he has sort of partial freezes for 30 seconds so that he can be pushing the wave and clearing the wave at the same time as his jungler is not going to be around. And the thing that was so impressive about this series is despite all the attention that RNG put bot, Hjarnan was able to lose less bad than...
He only died 3 times the entire
He can take a hell of a punch. That's the thing.
And I think that more than anything else is why G2 went through. And honestly, I've watched this series multiple times, and I still, even when I start watching the series, in my head, I still can't believe that G2 have won the series.
See, LS has the room with the
wait a minute, that wasn't a minute
and everything else.
Yeah.
Peter actually just tortures himself when he's in pain, right? He turns on the worst moments, has them replay over and over again, and cries with his.
It's basically that 50 Shades of Grey. You remember the 50 Shades of Grey meme where it's like, I have very weird like tastes or whatever, and his is just him replaying the fucking G2. I think they win this time. It's like, fucking hell, mate, come on. We've got to get past this, man. Like, it didn't happen, So.
But I mean, like, everybody, almost every single analysis of this series I've seen has focused on solo laners and how G2 won with their solo laners. And I put the credit for the series on Hjarnan. And I think that there are all, like, I mean, there's all sorts of terminologies people would use for bot lanes like Hjarnan and Wadid. You could call them role players, you can call them, various other things which are too impolite for me to say
not on this podcast, mate. Not on this podcast.
That I don't say. But there are.
My lord, he's fanning himself with the handkerchief right now as he says that. Yeah, keep going.
but I mean, if you look at basketball, there are players that you can call them role players, but they are key players to any successful team, right? So if you look at basketball, there's people like Bruce Bowen, Ben Wallace, Andre Iguodala. If you look at football, people like Sergio Busquets, people like Claude Makelele. You don't win championships without these players, but having their ability to lose in bad matchups, less bad than, like, the difference between losing a matchup by 50 CS.
I'm talking to NateDOhDoubleG too much.
Well, yeah. I didn't want to mention NateDOhDoubleG, but NateDOhDoubleG would be the perfect example of this. As somebody who maybe you wouldn't call them the star player, but the difference between losing a matchup by 50 CS, because you've had a ton of attention, and losing the matchup by 20 CS can be the difference between winning or losing a series. And I think that this series was a perfect example for how to play against a huge amount of bot lane focus, and that's why G2 won, in my opinion.
I definitely agree with Peter that Hjarnan mastered the art of not losing, particularly in the 5th game when he mastered that art by just straight up winning the lane. But when
it's the best way not to lose.
The problem with the part where I disagree though is that when Hjarnan was playing against good bot lanes back in Europe, he was actually inting his arse off, particularly in the mid game. So I don't necessarily think that this is like a consistent thing that one could have predicted. Like even again, like on now on the last time we were on Narrative Wake, like we all discussed. Sure, there is a scenario where this bot lane doesn't int their asses off, and that's if they either get they either get Heimerdinger, which is synonymous with Hjarnan in my head now,
yes,
or Tom Kench. And if they get those, then they won't be the liability anymore. And I fully agree with most of the analysis being on how their solo laners were carrying, because what we are essentially saying is, good job, Hjarnan, you didn't int this time. And that's basically the max amount of praise outside of the 5th game. But again, when he was against good players, this is a huge issue. And it really surprised me how often in this tournament he was actually able to get Heimerdinger Tarm. And then full hats off to him, that final game, no Heimer, no Tarm, none of this was in sight. Don't quite know how Wonder and Perks keep getting LeBlanc, Aatrox, Akali, all these insane picks. We're doing all the right bands. But I really fully agree. It should have been on these solo lanes. But I also hats off to Hjarnan at the very final one. There was no Heimerdinger, no Tom. You weren't a liability. You were actually definitely a huge reason why they won that game. Like, the way he played was far above what I would have expected of him pre-tournament, and I happily eat my words to that. I'll always be the first person to admit that I underestimated Europe, as I so often do.
The only way this story could be more satisfying to me, this brilliant redemption arc for Hjarnan, is if now actually Hjarnan came out and just honestly said that it was the criticism of Edius that made him realise what he needed to do, and that's what made him really good now. That's the only way it would simultaneously trigger everyone, but also make the story brilliant. Kelsey, were you going to go somewhere on this?
I will say that, kind of back to the point of Hjarnan really performing well this series, is that even in play-in, you see him just kind of like walking ahead of the wave for zero reason and getting caught, like both in the mid game and in bot lane, like these types of weird moments, and they just were really minimized in this game. And maybe that's because like he knew that he had to have the best series of his life because he was against UZI and Ming or whatever, and he really rose to that sort of mental game, or something of that nature. Also to the point where I don't know how they're why we're doing all of these bans. It's like, it's not that they're banning wrong, it's just that they are not trading for any of these picks. It's like we're giving away Akali and Aurelia, and we're just gonna take the Scion, maybe some Galio here. I think this is gonna be good. Let's put an Aftershock Lissandra. This is fine. We
can't deal with the Aatrox, but we need to ban Heimerdinger. What do we do?
It's like, so really, just give them one, okay? And everyone's like, oh my god, it's so impossible to draft against G2 because you have to ban the Heimer, and you have to ban the Tom Kanjan, you have to ban all of these insane give them the insane solo lane picks, but also take some, like you can trade,
The only way that story...
and a losing top, yes, or a winning top, and a losing, maybe you can do it. Maybe
the only way that story gets more satisfying is on the other side of the equation. Out comes Kesman and he says, this fucking arsehole Loco Doco called me up and told me that if I just ban out Heimerdinger every game, we're going to win 3-0. And I didn't realise till halfway in the series. What the fuck does he know? Like, that's the only way that story gets better, obviously, isn't it? Like, obviously, the best is that we just live in a solipsistic world where we actually influenced all of this somehow. In that, Kelsey, at the risk of triggering you, weren't RNG supposed to understand side lanes?
Yes. It's funny because I can't believe, like, I had to go back and I had to look at the drafts and I had to look at the champion picks for RNG in 2017 and even earlier this year and make sure I wasn't hallucinating, because it's just like this slow evolution over a 2-year period where it's like the Camille top is gone, Let Me is no longer, like, Let Me was the one playing a Kali top this summer. Like, it's so strange to just see them completely abandon it in all, like, 3 of the games that they won against IG, with Rookie, now touted as the greatest player in the entire fucking tournament, they were playing Rise, okay? And Xiaohu was down maybe like 10, 20 CS max in bad matchups and had insane impact in those games, playing at the sideline. I don't understand why it took them till 5 games to get to a Rise pick. I don't understand why... I'm just kind of really baffled by how they approached this tournament. Maybe they were in scrims and they were just like not having success playing like this for whatever reason, and they decided that they needed to all in on their bottom lane and have double bruisers or double tanks. So I can't really say what the theory was, but there are games, there is like actual video evidence of them playing this properly. They just didn't. I don't know.
Right, here's a really BM analogy. I don't know why I'm even prefacing anything I say. Like, why have I never done that for the last 700? But okay, I'll say that because I actually sort of like Doublelift as a person. But there's a great saying that's one of my all-time favourites, not least because it's incredibly condescending and insulting to idiots, and obviously they are my mortal enemy, which is that saying by Bertrand Russell, right, where he basically says that, like, a stupid man can't understand what a clever man says because he has to interpret it in his brain so that he understands it. So basically, when he says it, obviously it'll be wrong because he can't, like, comprehend the concept. I actually feel, again, this is a joke, obviously, that, like, Uzi got completely gaslit the fuck up by people like Doublelift, who saw what RNG was doing, interpreted in their brain as what they wanted it to be, which is, you just give everything to Uzi and then he's, you know, he, like, 1v9s the whole game, and he has all the gold. This is Dota, right? This is Dota. And then Reckless was like, yeah, you're right. You have to play AD carries to do that as well, and unless they give you everything, you can't do it. And then Uzi was like, yes. It's like that fucking meme of, like, I made this. I did make this. And then he was just doing it in the end, like, why have you done that? This team was fucking amazing last year. And then it looked like you'd done the slight upgrade. Now, how can they lose? Now we know. It's not even good a team.
The strangest thing is that if you don't respect the enemy bot lane, why are you sending 5 people to try and kill the enemy bot lane if you don't respect them?
Yes.
Just kill them 2v2 and win the rest of the map. And
guys, we've banned out the Heimer and we've got the best player in the world. Everyone must go bot lane. We need to gank this fucking Hjarnan. He'll take over the game otherwise. Like, what is this? What's the clock on Hjarnan that you were worried about?
But this is why I'm so high on Hjarnan for this series, because if you've invested this much resources into an individual player, this guy had better, you know, crush the other guy into the floor and carry you 1v9.
The name of this episode is going to be High on Hjarnan, by the way. Keep going.
It's funny because this is literally what Forgiven said he plays like. So Forgiven saying that he's given the passing on the torch to Hjarnan, and then literally, everyone's in the bottom lane. I'm 2v5 every game. You know?
Exactly,
it's exactly what Forgiven always says he plays his games like is actually Hjarnan. So there we go. Hjarnan.
But remember, the genius part of what Forgiven does, which also applied to Hjarnan, is that you make it sound like you're complaining, but actually you'd get so mad if everyone wasn't in your lane, because that's the whole thing you're building your ego off, is that you need them to be in your lane. So you don't want them not to be. You don't want it to be a 2v2. So actually, yes, he is the... Who knew of everyone? They had Reckless out there. We had Doublelift. We had all these players in the world. Who knew Hjarnan was the true successor to the Forgiven fucking lineage? That was a dark path. I never saw that one coming.
Talking seriously...
Yes.
Surprising coming from me, given the context here, and that I have multiple Chinese people I could be roasting right now.
You're going to big up China here, are you?
Huh?
Are you going to big up China in some way?
To clarify,
I'm going to big up the actual reason why the game played out this way, and also why I kind of disagree with the assertion that Hjarnan was 2v3, because he wasn't 2v3. What was happening was that they drafted better matchup top. RNG knew their win condition was bot side, and they were permanently playing towards bot side because of that. But what was mysteriously happening this series, which cannot be a complete trend if enemy is drafting like humans, is that Jankos was bot lane, and he, especially game 5, he was solo winning that bot lane. For sure. Like, yes, Hjarnan was playing really well. Okay, that's good. But to characterize it as he was 2v3 is actually not the case. And to characterize it as Forgiven's blessing is not the case, though it makes great PR, as I have found out. What I genuinely believe is that Jankos has actually fully earned 2 semis. He really showed up this series, and I think most people would look at that Game 5 draft and think, like, he can't gank either of these 2 solo laners, so he needs to get ahead. Well, they're going to get ahead themselves, because there's a kind of like a skill disparity, draft disparity, of course, Peter, in the top and mid lane. So he's just going to match them bot lane, they're not going to be able to do shit bot lane, and then you're just going to steamroll ahead and win the game. And you could even hear in the comms that have been released about that series, most of these tempo calls were from Jankos, actually. Like, most of these rotationary calls were from Jankos, which I was surprised by, because I would have expected Hjarnan to be the man to do this. Hjarnan's known as a bit of a brain, not just because of his name, but he was, like, legitimately a shot caller. For example, the old legendary 2015 H2K, one of the many rookie rosters that we sent to Worlds. But Jankos was the one that was making these calls, that was making things happen around the map, that identified how to really defeat RNG in this scenario post-draft. Because the draft really did kind of destroy them, given that RNG were just handing it over to them. And I really don't want to have that nullified, because I've been pretty critical of Jankos in the past, and Lord knows I was critical of him when I was on a team with him, but he really deserves these 2 world slots. And also, apparently, if Jankos goes up against a number 1 Chinese seed, it's impossible for him to leave with a losing record. It's EDG, RNG, send you next. The first one didn't lose a single game in China, and the next one won MSI. Like, just send the next one. Yes. We'll send Jankos in. It's a free win every time.
You know, that's the most underrated narrative, by the way. For everyone who talked shit on the H2K run in 2016, how is the Jankos run in 2018 tainted, my homie? They only had to beat out a Korean team, then get into the fucking playoffs, beat the number 1 team in the world that had won everything.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, just going to say, not very tainted, is it?
I thought you were going to say that, like, the 2016 lineup did legitimately beat the number 1 Chinese team at the time as well, and they also had, like, a legendary run domestically. I think we were one of only 2 teams.
People just don't know it for some reason, or they deny it, don't they?
We were one of only 2 teams that had a winning record against them in summer. The other team was Rox Tigers. No other team did. They were destroying.
But before we get too high, let's see what happens against Invictus. I mean,
we'll that's what you're betting it all on now, isn't it?
But I'm gonna go. But just one actually minor thing to add on to this. So I agree, Jankos had a fantastic series. Yeah. I agree there were problems in the draft. But I think one of the most underrated things that people tend to ignore about RNG is one of the reasons they're so successful in setting up bot lane plays is that their top laner, often through use of the jungle or through solo 1v1 play, normally gets push and normally gets wards on enemy Krugs and enemy Gromp, depending on what side you are. And that allows the team to set up with numbers advantage on the bot side, and is a key part to how RNG are so successful in playing through bot. And this series, because of the draft, they except for one game, they were never able to get those wards down, and therefore they were never able to track Jankos, and that definitely put the whole team out of their comfort zone, because those wards are the really important wards to make RNG style of play work, and they didn't get them in this series, and that is very, very draft focused.
I totally
yeah. I also think regarding G2, there are a lot of picks that we can talk about, but Gragas is a champion that makes it really difficult for a lot of RNG's drafts to get the first mid-tier 1 turret, which I think made them play really sloppy looking for things like Rift Herald and messed up a lot of their rotations as well. So I think that we can also credit Jankos and the draft for those things. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Kelsey, if we're going to talk about the last matchup, the Invictus Gaming versus KT Rolster one, like, I feel like this must be your fucking cursed monkey paw scenario, because China did eventually beat a number 1 Korean seed, and it was obviously the team, and it was the team that you could never have allowed yourself to actually believe would do it and put your faith in, and so you didn't. So, what happened in this series? How did it happen? How did IG beat KT Rolster? I mean, you sort of alluded to it before. KT Rolster maybe wasn't as good, in your opinion, as people hyped them, right?
It was funny because it's like if you see KT making these weird map rotations, what do? You just take a page out of the North American book and play the best NARAM comp you can come up with in the mid game and hope that they int into you. And by God, it worked to the first 2 games, didn't it? So that was a fun series. I think a lot of people are looking at this series as like, but this was the best series in quarterfinals. This is the only series where you can really say like both teams played so well. And I'm just like, this was not. Is this rose tinted glasses? Like, what's going on here, people? Like, I don't know what's happening, but. It was strange. I think that IG are a team that I would say that all of the Chinese teams and Chinese orgs, like, they will have an identity from the beginning till the end of time. And IG's the identity of playing through solos and playing like really heavy skirmish style is just currently really in vogue, and that makes them look exceptional right now. So there you go.
Yeah.
That was more painless than I
Okay,
expected.
I mean, yeah. So I'm just gonna make a brief comment here. I probably won't have much to say until you ask us to rate G2 and IG versus each other. But I do want to say that if people are legitimately saying this was a series where you could tell both teams were playing really, really well or something like this, what I really want to point out, because plenty of people have been saying that these teams are underperforming relative to how they always were. The thing that really killed KT in this series is the thing that has always killed KT, and it is that they do not reset on tempo after they win fights. They always extend on this. They always have. They always will. And this is a predictable thing. This is something that you can safely say and safely bet before the tournament that they will do. And they lost to this again. And this is something they have always done. This is not necessarily an underperformance. And I think on KT, since they had something so identifiable like that, because with Afrika, you could say, okay, so maybe they had like a poor read on how to play the meta versus Cloud9. Maybe they won't have that last zone. That was an inkling. But with KT, this is the same thing it's always been. This is the same thing it's always been. And I think that you have to give all credit to IG here for stepping up to the plate. You have to give credit to China as a region for improving. Clearly not enough to beat big regions right now, but they're getting there. And this is a series where, given that the flaws are the exact same as we have always known, there isn't this excuse there. And I hope that I hope that I don't see people go too far the other way with this, like they have been doing with Afrika.
Yeah. What about this then? Sorry, Peter. Can we just expand on this quickly?
Did you just to say?
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Go
No.
ahead. Sorry, I leave it on a second.
All right. Right. The point I want to ask to expand on, and everyone can jump in on this. So, as people from a coaching background, this is a legitimate, general question I have here, an abstract, which is, aside from when people overrate players. So, I'll give you a perfect example. Like Mate is just fodder for praise. He's only just ignored when he does badly, and the second he does well, he transforms back into season 4 Mata with the fresh skin on, and he's a god again, and he was always the best. There's only 2 forms he exists in, and in the meantime, he's in some...
Mata is 2016 Mata. Sorry, I get triggered.
And in the meantime, he's in some sort of quantum super state where no one knows where he is before he reveals himself by doing a sick play again on a carry champion. So until that happens, he'll get up. But how is it that people, on the one hand, never give up the idea that Matt is like a genius shot caller, knows exactly where everyone should be? Score is like the jungler who always understands where to be, understands pathing. But how do you have 2 figures like that and then never figure out what, as you've pointed out, Returan, is a fairly obvious trend they've had the whole time in this squad since they've had this core, basically. We're talking 2 years now.
Because it's safe bets. I would assume for the majority of people who are literally articulating it as simplistically as that, it's because it's safe bets. These guys will probably win when they face the person who's criticizing you's favorite Western team, and then you'll get to say, well, see, I understand this better than you.
No, but I mean, why do you think players like that actually do? How can they sort of... do you think they understand the issue themselves, the players? And they just don't know what to do? Or do you think is this their blind spot somehow?
Okay, so you're asking us from a coaching perspective why consistent issues like this...
Because I could believe that you could be all those things people said in certain sense, but at the same time miss this team element, and that's why I wanted to kind of get an abstract angle on it.
I mean, in my experience... there's I would assume that it's some form of muscle memory in play when there are players who literally cannot change certain aspects of their gameplay, even if they will admit to you, they'll be the first to admit to you, yeah, I shouldn't have done this here, or yeah, we should have reset here. Lord knows we had a long period where we were not resetting on tempo properly, and you just have to keep constantly reinforcing that into them faster than they are reinforcing it to themselves when they're playing their games, which is not something that is good for solo queue, for example. You basically never think about the game in these kinds of terms, and this is where these players mostly get their muscle memory from. But in terms of why players will stick rigidly to these kind of issues long and over time, I do think it's down to this kind of muscle memory thing, where it just doesn't feel to them like they should be resetting the tempo now. In the heat of the moment, they're not necessarily going to immediately do so. Peter disagrees with me or something.
No, I don't disagree with you, but I think that it's a philosophy thing, right? Because what you are saying, if you do not reset for tempo and you greed for that extra jungle camp, or you go for that dragon which should trade for your tier 1 tower, is I'm going to give you initiative and I'm going to be able to fight my way back to retake initiative from you. And this is something which KT have been able to do for this entire year. I mean, like KT have been the teams that KT have lost to. I mean, let's not exaggerate here. I mean, they've literally lost to one of the best Chinese teams. Yeah, I mean, they've lost to they've lost to a top 2 Chinese team that lost one series in each of the regular seasons in China, and this was a team in the same way that Kingzone in the first split, who were able to fight KT on this reset thing because they were not willing to take anything from KT, and when KT did their greedy resets, Invictus said, "We know you're doing this. We're going to punish you for it." And this is something which I don't think most teams, when faced with like the juggernaut that is KT, would have had for lack of a better word, the balls to go and do. And I think that this is why KT have continued to play like this and haven't adjusted their style, because the teams that they're swimming against, the teams that they're playing against in Korea they're rolling over and letting them do this. And nobody's called their bluff, nobody's challenged them. And it's just, and if nobody's doing this and nobody's punishing you, the best way to play League of Legends is as greedy as you can possibly play without being called out. And that's...
I think in terms of how you would prepare to play against a team like that, or at least how we would have prepared, is we had 2 big voices on our teams, and it would literally come down to I would have constant conversations with them about this upcoming game, remind them that these are the instances that they need to recognize in-game where KT are going to overextend, and you guys can actually look for a punish on this. That these guys will also end up being the people who will tell us in turn, "Oh no, guys, we reset now. No, we reset. No, we reset now." In game, kind of deal, and that's the only way that you can really prepare for that. You find these strong voices on the team. So I question if maybe the strong voice on KT, if it was, for example, Matter, like many of us have heard, if potentially they were, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say unreasonable, but I do want to say if maybe they were really stringent in a playstyle that hasn't just net them some success, but an insane level of success across multiple regions at this point.
I think you can trace this problem with a lot of teams that Mata has been on. Like, I think 2016 RNG is similar. I think VeXii Gaming is as crap as they were, obviously had this problem among many others. I think even Samsung White, because I didn't necessarily have the terminology to describe it then when they were super strong. But in 2014, like, a lot of people saw this as them being greedy.
They used to say that they were trolling as well. Like, they're just going to... I always used to say this to Monty. People like him aren't trolling, mate. They think that's the right way to play League of Legends. They think they're going to win doing that, mate. And just because it then works doesn't mean they were trolling when they lost. Come on, man.
Like, they just keep going into play without thinking, okay, if we stay on the map, they're going to be back on the map and stronger because they'll have bot or whatever. They're not necessarily thinking about these things. They're just still thinking, we're so far ahead, kind of in their heads. So I think that's a consistent issue with Mata. For me, I didn't necessarily think IG would be the team that would punish this. I didn't think that IG were going to be the team that would punish this, because I think that IG are sometimes prone to the same issue, frankly. So it was kind of really cool to see them step up and answer it. So there you go.
Okay. Right, let's transition to the semi then. So let's do this first then. Well, actually, wait a minute. Let me think. Did we talk enough about G2? The problem is, I think on the G2 RNG one, we really focused heavily, aside from Hjarnan, mainly just on...
Well, we picked up Jankos, we picked up the solo laners. I think we did a pretty broad analysis of
We never mentioned Perks' name.
didn't feel like
Wonder was just mentioned as a top laner, though.
Well, we mentioned solo. Okay. Perks
sure, I guess. Okay, I guess.
Skill
Sure.
disparity.
But no, let's do it then.
Great series, I think.
Yeah.
So
okay, what about this then? So going into the semi then, is this going to be what seems like on paper the easy narrative? It's like the solo laner battle, and then within that context, obviously, like we said on the one for C9 and Fnatic, the jungler can be a decider. Is it as simple as that?
I'm going to go super controversial on this, and I'm going to say that this series is going to be decided not by the solo laners, not by the junglers, but by Balan versus Wadid.
Wadid, fucking hell, he really has got. He's gone the ultimate hipster pick. He's gone the ultimate hipster pick.
I think this series is
Okay, come on.
by Baolan versus Wadid.
Okay.
And why do I think it's going to be decided by Baolan and one versus Wadid?
So this is the hill he's chosen. Let's go.
Yeah, this is the hill. This is the hill that I've chosen. I think actually this favors G2. And the reason
Fucking hell, I'm out. I can't handle this. Let's go. Come on. Why Wadid will carry the fucking semi-finals of Worlds? Yes, Peter Dunn, explain to me, please.
I'll have you know, veteran. But no. Okay, so as a serious point, I think that this series is going to be, of course, it's going to be solo lane focused. Of course, both of the junglers are going to. I mean, I assume that G2 are not going to commit two bans into banning out Ning's entire champion pool. But maybe they.
Zach, come on.
Maybe they will. Well, he does have Zach. That is true. Okay. But I suspect that both junglers are going to get comfort. I suspect that both of the solo laners on both sides are going to be extremely strong. And this is a meta where G2 have shown that they're not going to primary carry from bot, and the kind of picks that Invictus Gaming have been playing through bot, with the exception of Xayah, which G2 have shown that they're more than willing to ban out, are going to be scaling late game picks, right? So this means that what is the key matchup that is going to tilt the solo lane matchups? I think it's going to be based on which support is able to roam best from bot lane to impact the mid jungle 2v2. And I think that Wadid has a better sense of when he can roam safely. I think Wadid is smarter, especially on picks like Tahm Kench, about thinking how he can reposition in order to benefit, in order to swing the mid 2v2 match. And I think that Baolan is sometimes lost when he's has to do anything besides babysit Jackie Love. I think his vision control is not that good in the mid game. I don't think he coordinates well with Ning. And I think in a matchup like this, which is going to be heavily reliant on who wins in the sides and who snowballs solo lanes from early, what's going to matter is who is able to roam from bot to impact mid jungle, and in the mid game, who's going to be able to set up vision control better so that their strong side split pusher, if one of top and mid gets an advantage versus the other team's top and mid, who is going to set up vision better for their winning split pusher to be able to impact the map more. And I think Wadid has advantages in both of those areas. And that's why I think the series is going to come down to Wadid versus Baolan, even though I think arguably they are not amongst the strongest players on either team. So
the shell shock. The problem is it actually sounded a lot more reasonable. That's the problem with you, Peter. Like when you actually explained it, it wasn't as edgy. Come on, Kelsey, you've got some pushback here.
I feel like there are a lot of people who would say something like that, but they would realize that if you put an article on Reddit that say the deciding matchup will be Baolan versus no one cares. No one's gonna fucking read that shit.
Now I think people.
But I think that I honestly do think that the two best performing mid laners at this tournament are Perkz and Rookie. So I think that this matchup isn't going to be a matchup that's decided on mid, because I don't necessarily think that Rookie has played super insane this tournament, but domestically, you remember, like, Rookie wasn't having the same kind of pressure against a lot of the mids in China. So for me, I think that this isn't a matchup that's going to be decided entirely on mid. I don't think it's a matchup that'll be decided entirely on top. I think that jungle, support, and ADC will have a really big impact, and you can't, like, I feel like you have to have they can't just keep getting away with this sort of situation where every time G2 gets Tahm Kench, like, they get free wins off of that, and then they can now squeak out wins on other things, but as long as they have a Tahm Kench, I think that it's like very easy to happen. For me, it's actually weird because in my head this series is actually insanely close, and I don't think it shouldn't be on paper, but I haven't.
When you say it shouldn't be, who shouldn't it be close for?
G2, just because it should be easy to draft against this team. Like, it should be, you know? But I don't
You're
think...
betting against IG.
No, she's saying that by
betting for
default
IG.
she thinks that IG should be a bigger favourite, but that's going to be close.
Okay, I misunderstood.
But I do think it'll be close.
So what are they going to miss about banning, aside from the obvious, like the joke of what we said about NateDOhDoubleG, like, yeah, just ban out like Heimerdinger and fucking Time Catcher.
I was all
Is
down
that really...
for that.
Well, are you actually doubling back into a NateDOhDoubleG that if they do just ban those, they win the series?
I mean, I think that they only won one game where Tom Kench was without Tom Kench. They only won one game, and if all it takes is like one less game, and G2 aren't even in semifinals, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Like I do still think those two bans are really good bans versus G2, but at the same time, if you keep giving up Aatrox, Akali, Irelia...
But IG will actually take those champions.
IG will take the skill match.
But they would actually go for it, and we would see, like, Rookie is definitely a player who would take LeBlanc and would actually do really well with it. So, like, I don't think that they're going to run into the same issue of, obviously, the top laner going, I need to carry this game, give me Shen, that RNG was going for, you know? I still think there's a safe bans. Obviously, if they lose while banning those two things, I'm doing another, and then they seriously banned Heimerdinger every game meme. But they are still your best bets if you want to bring down some aspect of G2, so long as Jankos decides not to smurf all over your face again. So in that regard, I will agree that potentially this could be brought back to jungle matchup like we're doing with Cloud9 Fnatic, but not to anywhere near the same extent. For that, it was like better jungle is going to give us better mid, is going to give us better map control. Whereas here it's more like if G2 still get a good enough jungle matchup for Jankos, there is still a plan B even if Heimerdinger and Tom are out of the game. So don't waste your bans entirely. Really think what you're going to do with that third ban. Really consider maybe you want to first pick Tom Kench. Maybe your bot laner wants to take up Heimerdinger, who knows? That would be a terrible idea, and do not do that. But you have options, you know.
Actually, I like the Wanted Baolan comparison on champion pool, because I actually think Tom Kench is Baolan's best champion by far. So
I thought she was going to say Heimerdinger. Actually, they should first pick Heimerdinger. That's a good idea.
I mean, they could. It's funny because I think that we have seen a very small champion pool for the LPL AD carries at this event. It's mostly, except for UZI bringing out the Lucian, it's mostly for iBoy and Jackie Love, Benzaya, or Kaisa, and that's it. Like just Zaya or Kaisa. That's all we're gonna play. But we had Draven showing up earlier in the tournament, and Jackie Love actually made his name on Draven. You have so many, like he was actually a super big Varus player for IG as well. You had Varus showing up a little bit recently in a couple of the games. Obviously, Hjarnan played it. And you also had Kramer picking it up. So there are a lot of options where I think that bottom lane could still have an impact. Outside, and that, like, there could be champion pool crossovers between how Jackie Love and Baolan want to play, more so than there were champion pool crossovers with the way that UZI and UZI and Ming wanted to play, because they fulfill a similar function within their team, right? Like when the chips are down, they're typically fulfilling a similar function. It's just that Jackie Love also, IG decided that it's a good idea to have Jackie Love be able to have the Zayas and the Kaisas to give their compositions more dimension as the game progresses.
Actually, the Draven point's a really good point, because it does stop Hjarnan picking a lot of the things that he wants to pick. Like, you can't pick Sivir if the enemy AD carry can pick Draven.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, wait, what are you talking about? So it's powerful champion in the
Sivir into
Oh my god.
I mean,
he's rationalizing
Draven.
it. She is?
Oh, what's going on here?
Oh,
no.
No, I think Sivir is still the most powerful champion in the game. But there are.
That's the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, there you go. We'll go with that.
What about Vayne?
I think. Okay.
Well, you have to
We are
ban
not
Vayne
gonna
anyway,
open-
so you can't ever play Vayne in any matchup because you have to ban it.
Top collector.
All these opinions work at once. Don't
not
worry, it works.
The Vayne Ziver matchup because that is a long conversation about how Vayne can't siege. And, that's all we're gonna talk.
Yeah.
Plus, that's what proves.
I'm
Remember,
satisfied if IG take a game if they prove this for me. Lads, I'm telling you right now, alright? Okay? Counter to
Yeah.
Heimerdinger, no meme, Sivir. I'm not joking, by the way. Okay? Try it. You know, you're allowed to win a game if you do this. That's it. I'm just saying.
but obviously, you don't know that Hjarnan's going to bait you into picking Sivir, and he actually just picks Vayne.
So,
The Heimerdinger goes
QED. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter that, but it's a joke anyway. So, in that scenario, who cares, right? That I was just combining memes. You know what? Like that's the thing. Over the years, I realised memes are like the language of the 21st century. People don't know how to read or write or anything. So you just making meme gumbo is the only way to actually like get through to the people, you know. But what you do is you put in a little bit of like a reasonable point there, and you hope that it goes down with the medicine. You know, that's the secret to it.
Fnatic have 2 coaches, alright? Leave Dylan there. He can handle the kids for a day. Joey, go pop over to the G2 house. Wonder, mate. Heimerdinger top lane masterclass. Literally never lost on this champion, Joey Youngbuck.
There you go.
Let's go. And then there's the plan. There's the flex right there. They pick Sivir. You throw it top. Vayne o'clock, baby. It's everything is coming up G2
Yes.
here.
Yes,
Perfect.
we got there in the end. The think tank got there in the end. Right, what about this then?
Vayne doesn't counter Sivir.
Everyone knows it does. Come
She
on.
really,
Everyone
she really
knows
wants
it
IG
does.
to lose. She really wants IG to lose.
yeah, I think Kelsey has convinced me that IG are going to win this series. Yeah.
I haven't convinced myself.
No, because that's the thing, Kelsey. You're very good at like explaining why China is a really good region, but then you attach your own identity, like insecurities, to the Chinese region, and they eat you alive. I don't know why that is. Like, this is sort of like a therapy session. We're trying to work you through these issues. Maybe if IG wins Worlds, it'll be fine after that. You know, that's a happy ending or something.
Except for on the G2 RNG prediction episode, Thorin Loco versus Worlds, I explained exactly how G2 would win, and then I still predicted RNG to win. So, at all.
Well, that's the problem. Every time you let yourself trust, they just betray you. So how you've got to protect yourself.
Exactly.
Pick G2. Yeah, then problem solved. What about this then? So one player who we haven't name checked is the Shy. Now, this is another player where I've certainly seen him have very good games, and I think in the style he plays, he's very good. But I as a layman, I'm just baffled by why people he only ever seems to get raved about or not mentioned. So, what will be his impact on this series if he plays?
He can play Fiora.
Oh boy, actually, that's a big one.
It is. Because G2 have shown that they will blind Aatrox. They will first pick Aatrox, and there are.
Say that, Oli.
And I mean, obviously, we have Victor and other stuff coming out at this point, but Fiora is definitely a champion that you can that will deter a blind Aatrox pick. And this is again why you come up with this idea. It's like you don't have to ban all of these champions that G2 love. You just have to have good answers into them, or be able to pick some of them as well, and give yourself like at least a good winning mid or a good winning top. So.
Yeah, it also blocks the Camille top pick as well. So
Yeah. So you first pick Aatrox, they go Fiora. You flex the Aatrox.
well, I mean, Rookie. I've definitely seen Rookie play Fiora mid. I'm not imagining that, right? I'm pretty.
I mean, it got played a lot, actually. I'm remembering Icon play it way more, but Rookie probably played it, so.
Yeah, so there you go. Chase the Aatrox around the map. Put the Aatrox jungle, go Fiora jungle. No problem.
That Fiora.
But both IG and G2 have been teams that are willing to not just flex their top and mid picks, but to flex their top and mid laners at this tournament, like putting Rookie and Perks in the top lane and Wonder in mid and rotating around the map in that regard. Africa, obviously, another team that has kind of done that. So.
But I mean, I think for this reason, I think the Shy is going to play definitely the first game in the series, right? Like the Duke isn't going to play because of that for the first game.
It's very likely, I think, that the Shy will play out the series unless they drop a game that they shouldn't have dropped, and it's a very like stressful moment the way it was in the KT series. So,
Yeah.
And
How does it change the complexion of how you see the series if Duke comes in?
I actually quite like Duke. I have a similar attitude towards Duke as Soaz, except I see a lot of points where the Shy does stuff that Duke doesn't. It's kind of the difference is that. But I do think as an all-arounder, Duke is a really strong player, and he can play a lot of these top lane carry picks. I'm not seeing him pull out the Fiora as much or anything like that, but I see him being able to do a pretty good job in general.
Do you think that if Duke plays, they will do anything like put him on Jace?
Yeah, I mean, I think he plays a lot of the same champions that the Shy does, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Veteran.
yes.
Oh, sorry, go on, Peter. Yeah,
no,
continue.
I just wonder whether they're going to pull out. Like, it's almost a given that Fiora is going to be played in this series by IG. It's just a case of what other picks they pick.
Right, Veteran, you have been surprisingly quiet in this episode about Wonder. Like, I would have thought he would be in your wheelhouse of, like, you'd be bigging him up like the best top laner in the fucking world. Like, it's going to be so sick. Like, you've vaguely touched on it, but why aren't you bigging up that angle?
Have I been quiet about Wonder? I thought I bigged him up a lot this series. So
But in this, okay, come on.
Okay, well, there was a severe skill disparity top lane in every single player that Wonder has played against this tournament, but he was getting really favourable matchups versus RNG,
Right.
so it's really unfair to characterise it in this
Okay.
manner.
Okay.
But in
this series,
groups, in this series, I honestly can't say with any authority because I the only thing that I know about IG or that I'm going to be able to bring up about IG over these guys is how they lost to Gambit in season 3,
Right.
Fnatic in season 5, all of this good shit. I can't really honestly tell you how 2-0'd both times, by the way. I can't really honestly tell you like how he's going to match up here. I would just assume that I think that Wonder is playing at like a ridiculously strong level that I don't really see the Shy or Duke coming in and suddenly being an insane player over them. But Peter's grin tells me that he believes otherwise, so it's going to be so much more satisfying when G2 make it to the finals. So I'm staying silent because I don't want to be the guy who just comes in and bigs up Wonder without being able to authoritatively tell you about the Shy Duke or this Shy Duke dynamic. I was actually enjoying that conversation. I'm really quite interested in what the difference in playstyle is here because I only have this tournament to go
so let's
by.
expand on it a little bit more then.
Okay.
Let's do what I said earlier. Let's assume someone has already watched 10 months, and obviously in the 10 months they didn't watch the fucking LPL, did they? Not least because they didn't think they needed to, because they thought RNG just wins it and therefore there's no need to watch. It's like knowing the end of the fucking series of The Walking Dead. Why bother watch at that point in time? It's all filler anyway, isn't it? So come on then, Peter, let's keep this conversation going, Peter and Kelsey. Contrast the two players.
So I see less upside to Duke, so I would be more interested to hear why Kelsey likes Duke so much in comparison to the Shy.
I think Duke is really smart about when he's transitioning to group versus when he's keeping pressure inside. And I would say that probably the game 3 doesn't get to the same point it did if Duke were playing, but if it did, then they win it. Because I feel like Duke will just push to win at the right moment. They will secure KT's base, and it's a 3-0 series. So for me, that's kind of what I see Duke bringing to the table, is just a little bit more intelligence around that. I see the Shy bringing more raw skill and more coordination with Ning. I actually think that the Ning looks best when he's playing with the Shy and playing towards the Shy. And I think that was a big underrated factor in 2017 last year as to why IG had their sudden spike, is when the Shy, like this guy who had just been kind of hanging out in China since he was 15 and streaming Riven games, gets transferred from Team W to IG and is suddenly playing like these stage games. They're playing like these weird Kane Rumble comps where there are like 6 people on the top side of the map diving past the enemy's base turret at 12 minutes or whatever. And it was like kind of a really fun thing to see, just the way that these two players really clicked together. And so for me, this is the difference, is that if you expect the game to be longer, then Duke is going to bring better decision making. But the Shy is just going to steamroll things for you.
The main thing I remember in the early days about the Shy is he is one of 3 players who I actually hate irrationally because they ruined Reddit for me. So the 3 players who are 3 of my all-time favourite players are Madlife, Insec, and the Shy, the Korean player.
Yeah.
Because what happened
The
was...
Shy is also Korean, so it's even
Yes,
more
but
confusing.
I mean like the one who was from Zubu Frost, obviously. So what would happen is I'd go on Reddit and then I was going, I can't wait to see more Insect kicks. Every Insect kick I see from there on is a fucking moron in solo queue or someone in another region. It's never Insect. Then I go on there and I see, insane Madlife. Holy shit, man. I love when Madlife does plays. It's another guy doing just a normal fresh hook on a fucking solo queue game. So I'm thinking, right, finally, no one can trick me about Shy, the amazing top laner from this. Then the Shy highlight, Nidalee. Holy fuck, he's playing carry top Nidalee. Nope, it's a guy in China who I've never heard of. What is this? Like, that ruined all of Reddit for me at that point. And I think, like, here's the thing. It'd be one thing if occasionally they did that, but it got so that, like, 99% of the time, it's like I was a rat that went down a maze. I'd been electrocuted so many times. I probably missed a real clip. I probably just didn't click on a real clip by the end because I've been baited so many times.
So what I will say about the Shy is I think that the Shy is perhaps... It's definitely in the top 3 most naturally gifted mechanical top laners that I think there's ever been in this game. I think that he... Yes,
it's the way he saves the fucking goal till the end and just slides it out there. Really, it's like he's just waiting the whole time, and he's the guy who plays cards, and he has the aces the whole time. Just slides them out
As
there.
the Shy.
Yeah,
I'm bringing you the really controversial shit.
I know.
It's going to be about Battleland versus
Yeah.
Wadded and G2 come out ahead. The Shy, top 3 most
of all time. It's the way he slowly said at the end. He goes, top 3. I'm going, fucking hell, in this tournament. He goes, of all time.
Just for you, Thorin.
Come on.
I think the Shy may be the most talented, naturally gifted top lane person, top lane player of all time. I think he has some of the mechanical things that he could do in pure 1v1 laning, just in terms of when he chooses to trade, how he chooses to, how he punishes cooldowns of enemy laners. For instance, like he will pick for an ability which has a large cooldown, he will generally punish it to the max, so that the cooldown, there's about 2 or 3 seconds left on the cooldown of particular individual skills when he's looking to trade, to maximize the amount of pressure he can get on the lane, right? So normally, if somebody uses an ability on you and they miss the ability, it's natural to just go all in on them to go and get the trade. But what the Shy will do is he will threaten that for the maximum possible time he can possibly do, and then cash in his advantage at the last possible moment to maximize the amount of time he gets pressure over you. And this is one of the reasons why he's such a great Riven player, because Riven gives him this ability the ability in Riven's kit gives him the ability to use this as best as he possibly can. In terms of how we're comparing the Shy to Duke, the Shy is a much stronger 1v1 player. He is not as well-rounded in his approach to macro concepts as Duke is. But something that IG have successfully managed to incorporate into the team is that they have switched him from a young sort of rookie player, a raw player who would just go in and fight every single time he can possibly fight, irrespective of what else is happening on the map, to picking his moments when the enemy team can exploit if he's punished, because normally you have to send multiple people top to catch him. Which to catch him out when he's playing this recklessly aggressive style, which opens up the rest of the map. So they put him in a position almost where he's sort of a bait sometimes against certain teams. Teams will come and respond to him, and then they'll cross map, which gives Jackie Love and Rookie a lot more freedom on the map when he's playing. And yes, I think he also, I don't know whether it's because he's leading Ning more, but Ning does seem to play a lot better with him, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. So if we're talking about who the Shy is, that's who the Shy is. If we're talking about Duke, I think Duke is certainly smarter in terms of macro understanding of the game. He plays the game much slower. He doesn't. His laning phase, I mean, he's not terrible, but he's never struck me as somebody who's particularly special in terms of how he punishes lane. He's an above average LPL top laner who has a more solid understanding of when he needs to ward deep in the enemy jungle. I mean, I think those are how I would compare the two players. So I hope that they play the shy. I think that he can be really good in the series, but I think out of all the teams in this tournament, G2 are one of the best equipped to punish this sort of reckless aggression that you're going to get when he plays.
Okay. Have you noticed, by the way, as a trend, that the only way in the modern day you can get a Korean top laner who goes fucking balls deep and is super aggro is they have to sort of grow up in the wild. They can't actually come up through a training system. So like even, okay, the obvious examples are Huni, the Shy, but think of Khan. This is a guy who was nobody, just came out of nowhere and then he was on it. It's like they have to grow up like that. They basically have to be in solo queue. Then they do that. Otherwise, obviously, because for the last 5 years they've told every top laner, you don't play carries, you do this. Your job is for like you basically, in a way, for every other season, it was brilliant, but for this season, it's almost like put you in a disadvantage in a way.
Untempered aggression as opposed to the temperament that you imagine they would get in the, I assume we're talking about the Korean system when you say a development system. Sure.
I just want to throw out there when Peter says above average LPL top laner, he's not insulting.
Yeah.
A lot of people would assume that just being an LPL top laner is in and of itself an insult, especially after...
the problem is, in so many, to touch on what Kelsey's saying here, obviously at so many of the previous worlds, the top laners they sent weren't the carry top laners. So as a result, everyone thinks that LPL, like they actually think Mouse was the best top lane in the LPL. Like, no, shut the fuck up. Like, no one ever said that. Like, that was, you made that opinion up yourself just now to argue against it. Like, Kelsey never said that. Sure. Just saying. Why, I don't know why I'm getting triggered. I'm not even fucking... I know, why am I white knighting that opinion? It's fucking... Yeah, fight your own battles, Kelsey, right? Okay, but here's where we loop it back in, though. Here's where we loop it back in. Right, Peter, after everything you just said, right, how do you reconcile this? On the one hand... You've just talked about the Shy, top 3 mechanical top laner of all time. Like, fucking, I never thought the most ridiculously bold opinion this whole show would come from you, Peter. You had that one. Then you also said, like, you agree you can just ban out G2. Like, that can just be done completely. How are you going to balance...
I didn't say you could ban out G2. They said you could ban out G2.
Right, okay, but how do you balance that on the other side of the scale from... Baolan and Wadid. Wadid's going to be the key decision. You're going to have to resolve it for me. Who wins the series?
Kelsey has convinced me. I think IG are going to pick Draven and win.
And that's the reason why it's the Draven pick, right? Fucking hell, you're all over the place today, right? So it's going to be a Draven pick.
The real
it's now 3:20 a.m. I'm probably just a bit tired. No. As a serious point, I still think that both of these top laners and both of these mid laners are coming to this game on form. I don't think they're going to be able to crush the other person. I don't think. I don't think either. I don't think it's going to be possible for either of them to get an overwhelming advantage through play. I think it's possible that Jankos can snowball the game, but just as I think it's also possible that Ning can snowball the game too. So that's why I think that they're all on form. They're all playing really, really well, and I think they'll just cancel each other out. Which is why I think the bot lane is going to be influential. It's not like RNG versus G2, where you could think that maybe this is a skill discrepancy. It's a case of everybody cancels each other out. So who is the person that's going to tip the scales in favor? And I don't think it's going to come down to a mid 2v2. I think it's going to come down to a mid 3v3. But if Invictus Gaming are willing to let Jackie Love play on some of his signature picks, such as the Draven, which they haven't recently at all, then maybe this changes the entire dynamic and it forces more attention towards bot, and maybe it isolates some of these matchups, and maybe interesting things can happen. So
okay.
I also think crucially, IG in their series against KT kind of learned their lesson about Kai'Sa, which EDG didn't. You had in Game 4, they first rotationed the Kai'Sa pick, and then in Game 5 they went for Xayah instead. So I think that shows them kind of branching away from what I feel is a bit of the LPL death trap this tournament. So.
Okay. Right, Veteran, you did basically lay out the disclaimer that obviously you don't watch IG play all the time in LPL, etc. You're not an expert in the play. Which, by the way, like, to be fair, like, I don't think you ever have to justify opinions. It's not the end of the world to have an opinion people disagree with. But I will just say,
to mislead my audience because I normally talk from an area of expertise. I don't want to think I'm talking about
but I will say this, like, to everyone who's a member of the audience going, oh, yeah, actually, that seems reasonable. Like, I don't know why anyone thinks in League of Legends, like, how does the analyst not know every region? None of them do, mate. Like, almost none of them do. Like, you just don't know because you listen to an NALCS analyst do it and you're an NA fan. You have the same blind spot as them, you moron. That's the reason why it doesn't sound super bold when they're telling you Team Liquid has sick macros and going to do really well in their group. Like, you're an idiot like they are. Do you understand that? Like, if you think Veteran's being too controversial when he talks about EU, you're doing the same thing but the other side. Right, so Veteran, in the context that you can't know on IG, presumably you're picking G to win, right?
Presumably, I trust in G2 to win, but I will say that I actually think this series will come down to which side has red side. Actually, I think red side will win.
We didn't bring that up, actually. So, Kelsey, is that a factor in the series then? Because that was a thing that you obviously highlighted very early on, is that like IG had some ludicrous win rate on red side, and basically your joke was that they even skewed the global rates on that, which is, it's obviously hyperbole. But is that a factor in the series?
I really think it is, because I do think that IG draft much better on red, obviously, and I think that is a symptom of the way that they want to play with the solo and focus. And I think that even though G2 really love blue side and really love kind of this I don't even necessarily think it'll be a situation where, I think it'll be every time G2 has a pick, they pick blue, and every time IG has a pick, they pick red, so the sides aren't going to change. And we're going to see IG come out with being able to get the solo lane counter picks they want. And 50% of the games they've been counter picking for rookie, and then the other 50% they've focused on top counter picks. So it really just kind of depends on where they're going.
Okay. Right. One last question. I don't want to make this too long and broad, because obviously we're at the end of the episode here, but I promised we'd do this. Right. So we compared Jensen and we compared Caps. Let's bring the perks aspect into the equation. So we've got the 3 mid laners. What, in the context of the other 2, who we discussed and compared directly, is there anything we need to say about perks in that context, Veteran? Because obviously he's someone where he spent the whole year in people's minds behind Caps, not as good. Yeah. I mean, people mainly said that because his team wasn't as good, as past years. What would you say on that angle?
I want to temper things slightly, because perks had the better quarterfinals, for sure. For sure. And right now, if I'm picking out of the 3, I would pick perks. But I do believe Caps has the highest ceiling, and I don't want anybody to forget Perks' performances in the group stage, because I remember the Akali game, I remember the Lissandra game. Perks doesn't really want to remember it, so I'm sorry if I'm bringing it up and you're watching this, but these were not good games. And these were games where Wonder really showed his form and really showed his knowledge in how to actually execute a split properly. And I think Yanko's to a large extent as well, though he didn't exactly have the best group stage game either. These 2 guys are players that have performed really well in in quarters relative to their group stage performance. And this also gives me hope for, Kelsey was saying that she believes they'll stick to blue side priority. I think that they are a team that is adapting. They are a team that is evolving as the tournament goes on. And if they look at their performance against the RNG, I trust that they will realize that they should pick red, especially since I'm going to DM Grabs the moment this show finishes.
He's going to do a Loco Doco.
Yeah, you're going for the Loco strategy. So.
I really think Perks is the best performing player right now. I think by the time finals comes around, that would probably change the Caps, and it should change the Caps because I strongly believe in him. He has the best ceiling. And Jensen is not here in this equation. I guess you could say he's a wild card. I haven't necessarily seen the kind of playstyle from him that I would want to see to pull off, for example, that Perks LeBlanc game. We haven't seen any perfect LeBlancs by any means yet. None of them are exactly team fighting to the absolute highest level, but we have seen some ridiculously strong laning LeBlancs, and I don't see Jensen having the same impact around the map with LeBlanc that Perks was having, for example. I haven't seen him perform that kind of playstyle. So right now, Perks is best. My money's on Caps to be the best by the time finals comes around. Full confidence in you, lad. And, Jensen, you're there. Maybe you'll make me eat my words and NA gets the finals. But, there we go. They're all insane mid.
Well, I mean, you've obviously built in the trapdoor well there, Vetra, which we're all going to have to rely on, which is that if Jensen does do amazingly and Cloud9 make the final, it's what we were always waiting for if TSM ever did well. It's the European that carried them anyway, so fuck y'all. you know.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. But I mean, I'm going to reveal my hand here, but come on, NA. You never get to win. Obviously, you idiots.
Basil and licorice carry. Let's go.
To compare Perks and Caps really quickly, I think Perks is better than Caps on 4 or 5 champions, and Caps is capable of playing 30 champions to a high level, whereas I think... Well,
including Vayne, the most OP champion in the game.
Exactly. But I think...
Can he play Sivir, though?
I'm sure he can. But I mean, I think that basically...
That's to pry it from Reckless's cold dead fingers. Anyway, continue.
That's the problem, yeah.
I think in a different tournament with a different bot lane and things like this, it might be possible to target Perks actually in pick ban. And maybe if Invictus Gaming have found an answer to the Heimerdinger and are willing to first pick the Tahm Kench, maybe they do try to ban out Perks, because I think that he has only really shown super high proficiency on 4 or 5 champions. And on those 4 or 5 champions, you basically can't afford to ban those 4 or 5. So I would say that Perks is the best out of the 3 mid laners. But I think he's more vulnerable to pick ban than Caps is. And Caps has looked weak in pick ban because Fnatic have for some reason willingly put him in bad matchups for I don't know what reason.
Yeah. Again, caveat there, he hasn't exactly played these matchups well either. There are legitimate mechanical mistakes that he has been making, for sure. Although Irelia versus LeBlanc is unplayable until first item, no matter what you do, and LeBlanc should never be able to trade with Syndra pre-6. Doesn't mean you should try level 3 YOLO, and didn't even do that properly.
But I will say that I put Rookie ahead of all of them.
Okay.
So.
And at least in this tournament, I think Rookie is definitely in that. So.
Okay.
I like the way I think that had nothing to do. It was all about European mid laners, and Peter still was like, anyway, Korean person.
No, you have to let him. Like, I think
I know he has to get one.
I think this is how big the hole they've dug for themselves is. So, like, we'll mark in this.
Going into this tournament, I thought that
what was great was it literally froze, as Kelsey said, like basically what she was about to say. She was like, and I think that. And then it's like God just shut the internet off. Like, you've had enough. You've had enough now. Like, go on, what were you going to say? What were you going to say, Kelsey?
H2K Internet. I was really high on Caps going into this tournament, and I thought that Rookie would look better just due to his overall maturity, but I think Caps has a higher ceiling. It's just that then we see the way that Fnatic love to play, which is they love to transfer pressure from their bottom lane to their mid. They love to transfer pressure from their top lane to their mid. IG love to transfer pressure from their mid lane to their sides. It's the opposite situation, and we are seeing Fnatic 3-man party mid lane and Rookies still be ahead. It's actually insane. And as Rookies still be ahead, and Rookie's still able to on reset look for openings to go bottom and try to help his bottom lane, even if they're not doing that well. So. For me, it's actually crazy how well Rookie has performed at this tournament. So,
okay, sure. I will still put a lot of his leads down to matchups, but I also think that this mid lane pressure thing is something that I saw with other Chinese teams, so I can trust that IG will pull this off as well, and presumably they do it to a much better extent though. Since you guys are betting your lives on that, and it wasn't enough with winning mid lane matchups.
I still haven't picked a team to win this series.
Well, so. Betting this on
So.
it.
Kelsey, here's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, this is the real reason why it's unfair, the analysis game, because everyone who hedges, as I pointed out in my video I did the other day, everyone who hedges doesn't get punished, yet people who hedge should be punished more, because they've tried not to pick. So in my opinion, if you don't pick, you've lost no matter what, you know. So, come on, who are we going to go with?
I was trying to stall this discussion because I fully intend to pick someone. I'm just, like, thinking about it as we're chatting.
I will come in to like kind of bat for this though, that like I do think the reason why predictions are so often wrong, and the reason that they will always be wrong, is that there are so many variables that we do not know about in terms of how they are developing And I have always thought that, like, this whole game of, like, you guys make predictions, we mock you when they're wrong, and we legitimately take that as a slight against your analysis as a whole has always been really dumb. I've always avoided predictions for this sense. What you can do is you can make fun of me when Europe loses, because I'm obviously a European fan. What I'll try to do is explain to you how Team X can beat Team Y, but also how Team Y can beat Team X. And I'm not doing that out of a position of cowardice. I'm doing that because legitimately I do want people to listen to my general analysis, to my recommendations, to my outspoken views, and I don't want that to be diminished in any sense by a terrible predictions game. Yes, loads of people got it wrong, but there are more variables in League of Legends than I think that there are in quite a lot of, like, real life sports that will change game for game. There's so many things that happen behind the screen that we don't know about.
There's also, there's no timeouts in the middle of the game and extra coach. Yeah, it's just a game.
There's also not like god-like communication between everybody, and like the physical attributes of the avatars in the game change. There's so many different variables that we can't know. So when we're making these predictions based on how people play last time, like, I really hope that G2 changed their priorities from what they were. I really trust that Caps changes from what he was. If I was to bet right now, based on how Fnatic were playing, Cloud9 actually are in with a shot. If I was to bet right now, based on how G2 were playing, they probably don't make the finals. But I fully trust in these guys to change that. And I am supporting them all the way in that, and you guys can make fun of me for that. But there are so many variables that I will never be able to honestly tell you that this is the prediction, and I don't think any analyst is ever honestly telling you these guys definitely win. And
that part's just really for fun to have
it's just a for fun thing. But like, the reason why people get nervous, and I think rightfully so, is because these things do haunt you. They are taken like. And, at least twice a day I have to remind Kelsey that she thought TSM was going to come second in 2016. And this is the second time.
Whatever. I think that... Who am I going to pick? I think I'm going to pick RIG, because I do... It's kind of like this, like, G2 can't keep getting away with it sort of thing. And I don't think, like, for me, the big hang-up that I had against RNG and what I resolved after the RNG series is, if I think that there's a stylistic favorability for a team, I'm just going to go with that and ignore the nameplates, take the LS approach.
There we go.
If you will, ignore the nameplates. Just see how these teams play out the game. And I think based on that, there is more of a chance for IG to come out ahead. I think also the fact that IG identified KT's like kind of reset problem and played to that gives me a sense that they're scouting better and they're thinking of enemy teams' weaknesses better than RNG did in their series against G2. So,
can I ask Kelsey one question? How many Draven games will we see this series?
The real prediction.
Honestly, it's so weird because he has played it this year.
He played against iBoy.
Yeah, he's played it. One. I'll say one.
Well, okay.
I guess it's permabanned after that.
I just think it'll be kind of one of those things where it comes out because G2 have drafted in such a way that they've forgotten about Draven, and there is a perfect window for IG to just make it.
Okay, really hope they're watching.
Just to tack on at the end of the episode, just to tack on to what Veteran was talking about with the analysis topic, I'll give you what is probably the most missed aspect by fans, and I don't think they're missing it like maliciously, they just haven't thought it through, is there are worlds in which the best analysis will almost always be wrong, because it's so good that the team who then adapts and wins also thought the same thing and then did something different and therefore won. Like, think of it through for a second. It actually makes a lot of sense. And finally, it's just fun. Just end it on that note, shall we?
Sure. So that's why we'll end up literally everything. Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing, Kelsey. Actually, secretly, the problem is you don't know it, but all the Korean teams actually watch Summoning Insight and Narrative Wake, and they've just been taking all your sick analysis of China and been using it to beat China. So it was your fault all along.
Yeah.
So there you go. And if G2 wins now, we'll let you know. So
when full support G2 Fnatic. If you want to kick me when I down, you kick me when they lose. But when they win, boys, it's all coming up better than when they win. Holy God. Oh my god, I'm not even there for the
So,
final. I'll actually burn money. on it.
Mute.
Like veteran,
Better.
if two EU
During the
teams
series.
make the final, you have to get like an actual tattoo of that Robin on your body.
No.
What the fuck? You won't even do that? I thought you were more committed to the cause. I thought you were an ultra.
I'm going to spend all my money on a last-minute plane ticket to go to Korea. So
Right,
it's actually,
that's better, I guess. Okay, fair enough. That is better, actually. This video was kindly supported by Andreas, Snazore, Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Landon Thompson, NateDOhDoubleG, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out, as always, to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Would you fancy a few teasers for what's coming up in my content? How about taking part in an esports discussion with me? Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.